Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome back to the den for another episode of Answering the Atheists. And I'm so happy to see Brother Subhoor, mashallah, is back in the den to give us his brand. I don't know what's going to happen, though, bro, because there's no good cops here, mate.
We're going to go wild.
Bad cops. These atheists better hope Dr. Imran comes along pretty soon.
Oh, you know what? I think me and you loose, yeah? It's just...
Honestly, we need to use a Ponders or an Abbas or an Imran just to add some...
I get easily triggered by these atheists, and I go raggle, and then if you do the same thing, we're just gonna...
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say.
All you're gonna see is atheists walking into the lion Hamza's den and the bones flying out. And
honestly, subhanallah, there's no one to calm the things down. I think the denzians are gonna love it though. Inshallah. Alhamdulillah. Yeah. So welcome everybody. Another Answering Atheist stream. This one is with regards. What does atheism have to offer? We know it can lead to nihilism, which I put in the title, but there's many other things. So do as usual. I think you, brother, will give you a mini presentation, yeah?
Yep.
And then we'll just let it loose.
All right, perfect. So begin off with Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, Wassalatu Wassalamu Rasulullah. So first things first, Hamza's den has hit 20K. I said to Hamza, when you starting this off, I said, bro, it's going to take you time and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, before you knew it, the cave was ready. MashaAllah, very active. So may Allah bless the channel. May Allah make it increase much faster, and benefit the ummah in a very immense way, inshallah. The other thing which I just wanted to say is, guys, to run this stream, to do the stuff that Hamza's doing, to give platform to other du'at, doing all this type of stuff, these are the type of stuff that it needs your support, needs your du'a, needs everything, right? So make sure you guys share, subscribe, like, because remember, one of the ways these channels grow is actually by the way it's shared and stuff. And I think I was speaking to Hamza about this earlier. We should aim by next year, inshallah, this channel will be, I believe, on 100K, inshallah. This time next year, 100K, inshallah. Because look, guys, we got these massive channels of these atheists, yeah? And they're on like 1 million, they're on like big numbers. And the problem is the Muslims, I would say this, right? They're a little bit lazy in sharing. You know, they're enjoying the content, but they need to share, they need to like. Also, the other thing is, I would highly recommend, if you like Hamza's Den, take a few clips, right? And then go onto Instagram, chuck it on your Instagram, tag Hamza's Den, do the same on other platforms. And this is something that will also help us grow. So let's get to the topic of nihilism, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a story. Everyone loves a story. So the story we're going to start off with is a story that Friedrich Nietzsche actually gives. It's a very interesting story. Now, Friedrich Nietzsche, for those of you who don't know, I mean, unless you're living in a cave, I'm pretty sure, especially within the Western world, you would know who Friedrich Nietzsche is. Friedrich Nietzsche was a very important Western philosopher. And his philosophy and his genre and his entire way of thinking, it is something which had a huge impact within the philosophical community. Hence why today we actually have Nietzschean scholars. We have people whose entire life is dedicated on what did Nietzsche mean, what was his way of looking at the world. Then you get alternative scholars of Nietzsche who basically have an alternative perspective, a different school of thought, or God knows what, right? He's a very important philosopher. Everyone's heard of him. So here's his story. His story is of a madman. So there's a man who goes to a township, a village or whatever, and he basically is somebody who everybody is laughing at. He's walking around with this lamp and he's basically wanting to know about God. So he's asking people, he's asking them questions, he's trying to inquire, and people are laughing, people are ignoring him, people are, you know, mocking him and ridiculing him and this type of thing. So what we find is that he is an outcast. And what happens is when he goes with his lamp and he travels around and he's trying to talk to people, he's trying to interact with them, he's trying to ask them about God. And what he sees basically, essentially, is the people in this story, they're a metaphor for the European civilization. And the madman is Nietzsche. He's actually a madman. And what happens is, in the end, when he keeps asking them questions and they don't give him any answers, he takes the lamp and he smashes it on the floor, and he basically says, God is dead. That famous statement, God is dead. And what did he basically mean? He basically meant by that the Europeans have actually left the belief in God and they no longer believe in Christianity. But then the madman goes on to explain to people about, where is up and down, where is left and right, how are we going to make sense of the world? Everything becomes meaningless, everything becomes pointless without God. And they just think he's mad. They just don't understand what he is actually talking about. So what happens is, Nietzsche uses this story to actually show that he is way ahead of the curve, in the words of Joker, right? He's way ahead of the curve. He knows that European civilization at this particular time when he was alive, the civilization believes in civility, believes in morality, believes in ethics, believes in all of these values and rights and all this type of stuff. And he knows that if there's no God, ultimately there is no good, there is no bad, there is no valuing of human life, human rights, civilization, ethics, morals, everything goes out the window. So what he comes to a realization of is that the European civilization is in a state of religious intoxication. And when this religious intoxication of meaning, value, purpose, when it wears off, then they'll realize that Nietzsche was right, that when God is taken out of the equation, then everything turns upside down. There is no objective morality, there's no objective value, there is no objective basis for a purpose for the human experience. So what is Nietzsche basically saying through this parable, through this story? He is the madman because he realizes the implications of atheism. He realizes the implication for secular Europe, but the other Europeans don't, because they're intoxicated still by the meaningful values that Christianity actually allowed to actually flourish in Europe. So what his prediction was, and this is why Nietzsche is considered by some as an atheist prophet, because he made a prophecy. He said within 100 years or 200 years, European civilization is going to go through an existential crisis, because they're going to realize once we got rid of religion, once we got rid of Christianity, once we got rid of God, and we carried on believing in human rights, we carried on believing in morality, we carried on believing in science, we carried on believing in these things, they're going to realize you can't have your cake and eat it. If you don't believe in God, human rights, ethics, morals, civilization, values, everything goes out the window. Everything is pointless and absurd. And that is nihilism. Nihilism meaning there is no objective meaning, there is no truth, there is no morality ultimately. And what do I mean by truth here? I mean, we can't ground truth. Truth has no intrinsic value. Nothing is right or wrong. Nothing is sacred. So that's why Nietzschean philosophy is very important starting point. Now, what actually happened is that once people, and the interesting thing and the sad thing about Nietzsche is that he actually went mad, right? And his entire philosophy, it wasn't famous in his life, it became famous much later. And what's interesting about him is that people after he died, they started looking at his work and they're like, this guy's onto something. And what happened is, after the First World War and the Second World War, when European civilization started to go through this post-war trauma, you started to have this feeling in academia that Nietzsche was correct. And what they basically realized is that life is absurd. Life has no meaning. And the religion that they left, Christianity, it grounded them in that. So what actually some of them started doing is they started expressing these ideas of nihilism, which is also known as absurdism, right? Something which is absurd. So in America, to promote the ideas of absurd existentialism or nihilism or absurdism, what they did is they had this theater of the absurd. And what would happen is you'd have these people who'd come in, they'd sit down in the theater, and the actor would come up and he would go like this. Like a child, he would make these noises, and everybody would sit there. Why? Because it's absurd to go like this. What was he trying to say? He's trying to say, whether I give you a theoretical a sort of experience of me doing a drama or acting or a speech, or whether I just go like this with my lips, it's the same thing. Life is meaningless. Life is pointless. So this theater of the absurd was a way for philosophers, not philosophers, actors, to actually show people of how ridiculous life is if there is no God. Now, these are not religious people. These are atheists and skeptics and secularists. Now, interestingly enough, as we moved into the 20th century, the problem of nihilism is filtered down from the philosophers and academia slowly into the public realm. And what started to happen is people started talking about the topic of what's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of life? Go into the search history of Google and what questions people ask all over the world, especially the Western world. People ask questions. What's the point of life? What happens after I die? What's the meaning of life? And now what's happening with the atheist movement, Dawkins, Hitchens, Harris, Krauss, all these guys, even they have realized, hang on a second, our worldview doesn't give a justification for right or wrong or purpose or morality or ethics or civilization or values. So now they are trying to, some of them are trying to, others aren't even trying, they're trying to plug that gap. But what we are simply doing is this: we're going to invite atheists into this den, right? Me and Hamza, and we're going to simply give them the platform. I'm going to sit here, I'm going to enjoy water, he's going to enjoy his coffee or whatever it is, and we're simply going to say, all right, we're Muslims, you're an atheist, the mic's over to you. Tell us what atheism has to offer. Tell us what we would benefit from believing in atheism. Tell us if atheism can justify right or wrong, if atheism can justify ethics, values, purpose, or even truth having a value, because science, according to Nietzsche, was a carcass of Christianity, right? And science itself, which is supposed to be, according to the new atheist, a pursuit of truth, truth itself has no value if atheism is true, and truth can only be justified from an Islamic perspective. So we're going to put that challenge out there, the challenge of nihilism, the challenge of existentialism to the atheists, and we're going to say, bring it on, come into the den and explain to us what exactly do you have to offer.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so you went a bit deep for some of the people, because people, you know, they've not read philosophy, they don't know Nietzsche and all this, and to be honest, I'm learning myself. So I'm going to give them a layman's nihilist. Yeah. So if you, I don't know if any of you have watched the program Afterlife, Ricky Gervais, and his wife dies of cancer, and then he lives this life. He then becomes a nihilist in that program, and everything. Yeah. If you watch that, everything he pointless. Everything's pointless. There's no point of anything, and he has a few digs at religion and such during the series. But that's a layman's example of a nihilist, and I guarantee you, majority of people who watched Afterlife thought Ricky Gervais was bonkers. His character. Nobody said, "Oh, that's a reasonable thing. that's reasonable behavior." You'd be like, "This is irrational." You know, that lady from the home likes him, and he's like pushing her up. It's irrational, and I guarantee you, when you were talking then, Subhoor, I guarantee a lot of people going, "Oh yeah, right, whatever, religious nuts are good," and I guarantee they would have been shouting at Ricky Gervais on that TV program, saying, "Are you stupid, mate?" Because that's what nihilism is, stupid. And I'm going to bring it a little bit to a somber tone now. I truly believe my brother was a kind of nihilist. And because what nihilism can do, it can lead to suicide. Because all of a sudden, if there's no value to anything, and yet the life you're living might be a little bit of suffering, a little bit of pain, and you don't think there's no point to it, then of course death becomes an alternative to that. So you could alleviate the pain, because it's not, nothing's happening anyway. There's no point to anything anyway. So I believe my brother was on this flex and he killed himself about 5 years after I became Muslim. So it's very, very important. This is not something that should just be brushed under the carpet. Oh, what does this title nihilist mean? And people can get stuck into this. And it happens to people who do go on the atheist flex. It happens to those people who have no purpose and meaning. And there's no reason, once you're dead, you're dead. That's it, YOLO. But then if you're not making it in this world as successful as other people you see, and you think this is it, death becomes a viable alternative. So be very, very careful of it. Right. Anyway, before we start, 1 second. I'm training my denzians, mate. Yeah, we call the members of Hamza's Den denzians. Yeah, and denzians is obviously, you will probably know, is people who frequent a particular place. And so this is what I thought I would.
Can I just ask you a question? You just had a new member. What does a member mean, and what's the benefit of being a member?
Oh, okay, subhanallah. Yeah, I've had 2 new members since I've been on. I'll put this one up. So Lopez, alhamdulillah, just became a member of the Den. So he's just become a denzian. And now he's got access to certain perks. For example, like, you see some of these emojis with me going like this, and of me, a caricature of me. So these are the emojis you get access to by being a member. You get once a month live streams. And at the same time, you support the channel and become part of what we do. So, for example, last week in the arena, we had a shahada, mashallah. So all the denzians who are supporting the channel and the patrons who are supporting the channel financially will get reward of that shahada for themselves as if they give their shahada. So it's massive, alhamdulillah. So once you're a subscriber and you like the channel, the next step is to become a member, inshallah. So, yeah, sorry. I have this kind of pet irritation thing that I have to get sorted out before we continue, if you don't mind. Because how many people are in the room now? 344, yeah? And they know what I'm doing. They know what I'm doing. 221 likes. That means we got 120 trolls in the room, or we got 120 lazy people. Hit that like, hit that share. Because atheists, you will be coming on. You want to share this with all your atheist friends and all your Christian friends, because your Christian friends will enjoy this as well, because they love to see an atheist get a pounding as well. So, and obviously all your Muslim friends, alhamdulillah, to see how you deal with these issues. So I want you to hit the like. I'm going to refresh in a minute. 1 second. Sorry, Subhoor, I have to do this.
No. This is very important.
This is the training, inshallah. They get there. They'll get there.
I was just on another live stream just before this, and something which I said then, I think it's important here as well. You have no idea how when you share stuff, it just goes somewhere. I mean, you'll be very surprised at this. Yeah, you'll be very, very surprised at this. Not you, Hamza, but everybody who is not so much in tune in terms of social media and stuff. Sometimes you sharing something, and that you just think, oh, I just shared a video, I shared whatever. That thing reaches somewhere where you have no idea. And all of that ajr goes back to you, because look, at the end of the day, it's not even about the shahadas, right? It's ultimately about giving the message of Islam. And the message of Islam is something that you are rewarded for. So look, the way I see it is, when me and Hamza are in the den, we're taking out the intellectual challenges that atheists try and posit. And much of these challenges are purely rhetorical, and we simply have to point them out. We have to simply say, well, this just sounds smart, but in fact, it's got no basis. And you never know. Someone watching this, they could have their doubt removed. Somebody who's looking into Islam, they accept Islam. Sometimes it increases people to actually give dawah, and you never know what happens. I mean, I've got messages from people who, through Ira's work and stuff like this, somebody shared a video, they shared it with someone else, and before you know it, it goes somewhere where you can't even imagine. You know, when you, Hamza, you're like, you got to like the comments, you got to do this, you got to do that. You're not just saying that. You're saying that because you understand the way the algorithm works. You're saying that because you know if you're going to put in all this effort, you might as well make the best of it, right? So either we got lazy people or we got trolls. So I
think we got trolls though. I'm gonna lay off my people. Yeah, you know why? I think we could easily have about 100 trolls in this room today. You know that, because we seem to attract them on this kind of stream. You get me? But we triggered the atheists badly. So, you know, look at the title of the stream, Answering Atheists. I was on TikTok for about 2 hours today doing a live, right? And I just kept baiting them, telling them what's coming tonight. So I'm going to check one more. Let me just check. I think we should have hit 300 likes. Have we hit 300? Yeah, we're on 305 likes. I'll take that. Right. Hamza, you need to tweet you alive. Yep, that's true as well. Oh, man. I hate Twitter. I can't get used to it. Right, so we're just going to put the link out then, aren't we?
Yep, that's
Atheists, you're going to come and educate. Because it's true that you know that. We go to a speaker's corner and you get atheists coming up to her and saying, oh, Islam is this, or you believe in this and whatever. And, and it's like, well, what are you trying to, what's your point you're trying to make? Have you got something better for me? If you've got something better for me,
yeah.
bring it on.
I mean, it's like this. I mean, it's very interesting what you just said right now. If somebody's trying to tell me, oh, I don't like your shirt, the colors are off or whatever it is, give me an alternative.
Yeah.
When they try and point out, oh, in the cosmological argument, there's this particular issue or there's this going on, or, they're just clutching at these little straws. What we're doing right now is we're saying, forget that, bun that, right? Come on the show and just give us your dawah, give us your evangelism. We're just going to sit back and listen. Today, I'm not going to be in Lion's Den, challenging atheists, and nor is Hamza. We're just going to sit back like a bunch of Quakers, halal Quakers, not the theological Quakers, but as peacemakers. We'll sit as peacemakers, and we'll say, all right, fine, bring it on. What exactly are you calling to? Because something that I've always found confusing, and in fact, I made a video about this recently. 10 years I've been giving dawah to these atheists. And 10 years, I still don't understand what their message. Now, when I'm trying to talk to a non-Muslim, and say when Hamza was a non-Muslim and was looking into Islam when he was an atheist, he knew the message of Islam. Islam is saying there's one God, la ilaha illallah, there's none worthy of worship except Allah. We love Allah, we have hope in Allah, we have fear in Allah, we have trust in Allah. The purpose of life is to worship God. Simple. You get it. That's what it is. But when you are an atheist and you're calling others, what are you calling to? Human rights? They don't exist. Better morals? They don't exist. To do science? Science has no meaning, value, purpose without a theistic ground. So what exactly are you calling to? Are you just complaining for the sake of it? And what we got to understand is ultimately, if you want to convert the world, if you want to push out a narrative, then you have to be able to articulate yourselves. Now, it may look a little bit intimidating to enter the den, but we're just going to sit back and Hamza, let's have this agreement, yeah? We won't even interrupt them in the first 5 minutes, say. We'll just give them a platform for 5 minutes or 3 minutes, whatever you want. And we'll just sit back and listen. I just want to hear, what do they have to offer?
Okay. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. All right. I think we've got our first guest, actually. Someone called Terminus. So let's see what's going on. Good evening, Terminus. Or good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are. Hello, Terminus?
You hear me now?
I can hear you now. Where in the world are you, my friend?
I'm in LA.
In LA?
It's 12 right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're 8 hours behind, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to the day.
Good afternoon to you. The issue that I kind of see is you're saying that nihilism and atheism are inextricably linked, and I disagree with that. And the reason I disagree with that is because I have yet to meet an atheist that is truly, there is no point, everything worthless, we're just chemicals and motions. I have yet to meet it. So it's peculiar to hear you say that, oh, nihilism and atheism are linked. But I guess that's a little bit of an issue for me, simply because that's purely anecdotal. But just because someone's an atheist, I'm an atheist, I'm not a nihilist. So I'm confused why you think that there is this link between the two.
Do you accept that atheism can lead to nihilism?
Yeah, I accept it can. I don't think it's...
Can theism lead to nihilism? Obviously not. Right.
No, but I don't know all theistic claims, so sure, I'll accept that. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. So the threat of nihilism is only to an atheist, isn't it, rather than a theist?
How is that a threat, though?
How is it a threat? Do you think nihilism is a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a thing. I don't really see why it's good or bad.
Is it a virtue? Is it something good to have that kind of outlook on life?
Why not?
It's very negative, isn't it? Very destructive.
But you're assuming that it is.
I'm assuming. Why am I assuming it?
Why? Because the issue that I'm having is the fact that you are saying this is bad from your worldview. From a nihilist's worldview, no, it isn't bad, right? So
are you a nihilist? Yeah, but you're not a nihilist.
No, I'm not.
So, right. So from your worldview, is it a bad thing?
No, I think it's just like being a Muslim. It's a worldview. It's a point of view.
Okay. And how do you understand the nihilist point of view?
No meaning in our reality. No worth. No
worth in anything. No point in doing nothing. There's no purpose to anything. No purpose to life. So, like I said to you, a nihilist could easily lead to suicidal thoughts if they're facing suffering in their life, which they don't think there's any point to suffering.
I don't think that's suicidal thoughts and nihilism aren't linked either. Just because
I'll explain it again to you. If you're a nihilist and you don't think there's any point to life, there's no purpose in anything, there's no reason for anything, to do anything, to invest yourself in anything, and then at the same time, you're suffering in that life needlessly then, because you don't need to. It's pointless. So why should you suffer? Because there's no point to it anyway. You're not going to get anything for that suffering. So obviously it can lead to suicidal thoughts.
It can, but I have also known Christians that have committed suicide. So
no, but that's not the point.
The point is that nihilism can lead to suicide. I mean,
yeah, that's what I'm saying to you. That idea that is, I think, is a dangerous mindset. So, for example, if you're a practicing Muslim following the teachings of Islam, you could never commit suicide. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure.
Based on the doctrine, yes.
Huh?
Based on the doctrine, yes. But
based on its teachings, based on its guidance. Yeah, exactly. Based on its worldview, you can't. But if you're in a worldview where nothing matters, of course it can. Anyhow, let's go back to the point. You're going to give us a way of life that's
okay. Can I just come in? What was your name? Terminus. What's your actual name, if you don't mind?
Landon.
Landon. Okay.
Landon. Okay, Landon. Just a few things, right? So firstly, you said that atheism doesn't necessarily lead to nihilism. That was your point, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Another point that you said is that there's no link between suicide and nihilism.
I said they're not necessary, right? So you can be a nihilist and never commit suicide. That's what I was saying.
So do you think there's a link between nihilism and suicide? Meaning, if you're nihilistic, you're more likely to commit suicide?
Perhaps I don't have the numbers. Okay. Yes, I'm fine with conceding that.
Yeah, I'm not challenging that at the moment. I'm just looking at your thoughts, okay? And another thing is, you consider nihilism a worldview, and you don't give it a label of good or bad. You just say it's a worldview.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, I'd like to just challenge these. And Landon, right? I mean, welcome to the show. You're from LA, and we're here to obviously disagree with each other, but we can do so in a nice way. The first thing about atheism being linked to nihilism. Now, why I disagree with this is because the most prominent proponents of nihilism were actually atheists, and atheism is a worldview which ultimately tells us that all of the human experience, our consciousness, our morality, our ethics, our values, everything can be broken down to matter. The biological facts can be broken down to physical facts, which can be broken down essentially to mathematics. So there is a necessary link between atheism and nihilism. The other thing
I disagree. I think that you can say there is a link between nihilism and atheism, but that doesn't go the other way. So if you are a nihilist, I can concede that you are more than likely to be atheist. But if you're atheist, that doesn't mean you're more than likely to be a nihilist.
Okay, so I totally agree with that, because what I totally agree with is you right now are an atheist and not nihilist. Okay?
Yep.
Now, there are many atheists who are not nihilists, like you said earlier. But in the most politest way, I would say that is pure delusion. Okay, it's like me being a Muslim and I believe it's okay to drink alcohol. Now, technically, do we have Muslims who live in the world who believe it's fine to drink alcohol? Sadly, we do. But is it logically consistent to be someone who subscribes to the Islamic faith and to believe alcohol is good? There's incompatibility. So anybody who believes you can be a Muslim and drink, they're under a state of delusion. So yes, there are many atheists who are not nihilists. In fact, Friedrich Nietzsche, his madman parable is about that. It's about that fact that he realizes nihilism is the only street we have to actually go through, because theism is no longer an option, and therefore meaning, value, morality, purpose, everything goes out. And he sees his European civilization, his comrades, are in a state of delusion. They think meaning exists. They think they have this religious intoxication. So atheism is necessarily linked to nihilism. That doesn't mean every atheist is a nihilist. The only reason why the atheists are not nihilists is simply because they've deluded themselves and they're being philosophically inconsistent. Now, the other point which I just want to make, because I think this is extremely important, Albert Camus, who's another person who I didn't reference, who was a major nihilist, you should look up his philosophy, because his philosophy begins off with the necessary link between nihilism and the question of suicide. Okay, so he considers, and these are going to be his words, which I'm going to read out, and I'm sure you've heard of Camus here, right? So suicide as a response to absurdity. This is what he says: there is only one serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Deciding whether or not one's life is worth living is the fundamental question of philosophy. Now, what he tries to do, Albert Camus tries to do, is he tries to escape this nihilism and give a perspective where you shouldn't commit suicide. However, nihilism leading people to suicide, and nihilism as a philosophy being binded to suicide in terms of the absurdism that actually nihilism comes along with, that's something that's historically and philosophically very hard to untangle. We actually have that. The last thing which I'd just like to clarify before I give it back to you, Landon, is where you said nihilism is neither good nor bad. Now, the problem with that is this: if I am a Muslim and I subscribe to the Islamic ethos, I subscribe to the idea that there's none worthy of worship except the Creator. Now, if I have except Allah, except the one God, and Muhammad is his messenger, so I subscribe to the Quran, I subscribe to Islam. If I have that subscription, automatically that has an implication.
I conceded that point. Or
Yeah.
if you rewind the tape, I conceded that from your worldview, nihilism is bad. From my worldview, it isn't.
No, but I'm about to explain something else. And that is basically this, which is that once you have a particular worldview, it has implications, and those implications are intrinsic within that worldview. Now, if you are to make the claim that from your atheist perspective, nihilism is neither good nor bad, then you basically have two options. The first option is you've conceded right and wrong is subjective and it has no objective basis, or you believe right and wrong does exist, but nihilism is not objectively wrong. So I just want you to unpack that. Are you someone who believes in subjective morality or objective morality? And how do you judge that nihilism is essentially a benign worldview? It's neither good nor bad.
So I would fall under my worldview. There are very few worldviews that I can think of that I can say are bad from my perspective. Like Jehovah's Witnesses, maybe, like Scientology. I don't know. So nihilism as a philosophy, I think, is neither good or bad. I take this position sort of on many philosophies where I can't really say whether it's good or bad. The acts associated with that can be judged as good or bad, right? So Islam, right? So I can say Islam is neither good or bad, but the acts associated with apostasy or Islamic extremists, I can say is good or bad, right? So a philosophy in itself, I don't think is a good or bad thing, but the acts associated with that philosophy could be judged as good or bad.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit. You said scientism is a worldview that you would say.
I said Scientology.
Sorry, Scientology. Apologies. Scientology. You said that is something you would consider bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the acts associated with it.
Okay, so those acts which you as an atheist consider bad. So say, for example, something in Scientology, which is the way that they have control of people, right? The way that they have this occultish type of control. That act, would you say that act is bad?
Yeah.
Okay, so that act being bad, is that objectively bad or is that subjectively bad? And what I mean by this is
subjectively.
Okay, you believe it's subjectively bad. Okay, then a Scientologist can simply look at you as a normal citizen and you taking out the garbage and say that the act of taking out garbage from your house or the act of helping an old lady cross the road, the Scientologist can say that is bad from my subjective morality. Hypothetically, they could say that.
Yeah.
And there's no adjudicator between either of you. It's empirically equivalent.
Yeah.
So all that you have all that you've agreed to so far is that your entire perspective is your first person experience and the other person's first person experience is equivalent to yours. So in essence, you aren't actually saying it's bad. You're simply saying it's bad from my subjective point of view.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. That is precisely what we've been arguing atheism actually leads to. It leads to subjective morality where one worldview is not better than another. So whether it's helping an old lady cross the road or it's stabbing a squirrel, right? Essentially, these acts are neither good nor bad from an objective point of view.
But there are secular moral systems that I think claim to be objective, right? We can go to utilitarianism or Kant with his categorical imperatives. Sam Harris also believes that morality is objective, that we cannot simply say it is subjectively bad. Morality...
Okay. Yeah, but it can't be universally objective, can it? Because morals change depending where you are.
Let me just make a small correction there, yeah? So you mentioned, look, there's secular ethical systems. You mentioned utilitarianism and Kantian ethics, and then Sam Harris. So I'm just going to explain this a little bit. Firstly, Sam Harris is a utilitarian. So you have utilitarianism, you have Kantian ethics, and you have virtue ethics. These are the main sort of things that you have within Western philosophy. However, these are systems which are applied, but for you to be able to make the claim of objective morality, you need something other than the system itself. So, for example,
I agree. That's why I don't think that they're objective, but they claim to be objective.
Okay, I agree with you. They claim to be objective, but they're not objective.
Yeah.
Right? Just the thing about Sam Harris, right? So Sam Harris, he would say, if the ultimate goal is human flourishment, if the ultimate goal is the most amount of pleasure, then action X, Y, Z is good and action action ABC is bad, right? However, the problem is the assumption that that is good is something which is baseless. There's no way he can actually prove that. So even if you mention these secular philosophies, we just go around in a circle and we come back to the same place, which is that it's ultimately still subjective.
Yeah, I think morality is subjective.
Okay.
I take it kind of like color. With humans not existing, with humans not experiencing it, there would be no color. We would not call something red. It is subject to our personal experience and our definitions.
And that would be precisely the sort of definition of subjectivity. But this would also mean, what was your name again? Landon. That would also mean that truth is no longer important.
You can still have truth subjectively.
No, I'm saying something different. I'm saying truth is not valuable. It's not important anymore. I'll explain to you why. Okay, so if right now you come to me and you say, I should believe in science and I should believe in a particular theory of science because science is, giving us some form of truth, or history or anything else is giving us some form of truth, right? then I turn around and I say, no, actually, I'd like to make up my alternative history. World War II never happened. In fact, there was a fight in which people were just throwing lollipops at each other, something absurd as that. I just make up my own delusional history, right? And I refuse to believe in, various different things. I refuse to believe in Napoleon. I just have my own alternative world. And I believe in falsehoods. And you believe in truth. Now, how are you going to call me to truth? You're simply going to say that I should follow truth and I should leave falsehood. And I'm going to say to you, why? You're going to say, because it's truth. And I'm going to say, but why? Why is truth of any more importance than falsehood? And you're going to say, because following the truth is good. That's the only answer you can give. And the problem is, if it's good, then truth is a moral value. And if truth is a moral value, then truth becomes...
No, I would have conceded. I would concede, yeah, that it is subjectively true that I desire truth. Yeah.
Okay, good. That's all I'm saying. It is subjective in the same way that you prefer vanilla ice cream rather than chocolate ice cream, or the Scientologist has a particular understanding of morality that they believe to be right or wrong. You believe the opposite. Likewise, truth and falsehood. Truth has no intrinsic value. It only has instrumental value.
I think there's a miscommunication, because I never denied that truth doesn't have value. I'm saying that truth is a thing, even in a subjective worldview.
I agree with that. And I believe it's totally coherent to be an atheist, to believe that truth exists independent of human minds. I'm not making that argument. I'm making the argument that truth has no intrinsic value under an atheistic perspective. However, conversely, flipping the script from a theistic perspective, we can ground truth in the same way we can ground morality. And how do we ground it? We ground it in the belief in God, because God is the truth and God is the good, and God is the source of us valuing truth and us valuing morality and us valuing ethics and having value and purpose and these types of things. So from an atheistic perspective, so far, by the way, I have to say, you're one of the most, frank atheists I've spoken to in a while. In fact, atheists...
I lay my cards on the table, my friend.
Yeah, the thing is, London, look, when I talk to atheists who are from an academic background, they concede exactly like you do. They don't put up this type of a veneer of, oh no, we do believe in this and that. I mean, some of them try it at a popular level, but I commend you for being honest about these things, because at the end of the day, look, we may disagree, but you have to concede where respect is due.
Mm-hmm. And you've been very respectful as well, so I thank you for that.
Can I ask you a question?
By all means.
Have you thought about converting to Islam?
I've thought about it. I've talked to many Muslims. I actually have to check. I last time, Hamza, I don't know if you remember me. I was on the last show too.
I think I do remember you on the arena.
Yeah. And I asked you what Quran I should order, and I recently got a Quran, so I'll read through that. But many Muslims I've talked to say I should try being a Muslim for a week, a month, to just see. Don't drink alcohol, don't eat pork, pray 5 times a day, things of that nature. I've thought about doing it, but I've never done it.
So let me give you a little an offer, right? Can you see in the private chat? We have comments and we have a private chat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you, in the private chat, if you put your email address or your WhatsApp number, I'll get into contact with you. And me and Hamza, we can actually just have a offline chat. Because, the whole thing about when people come on live is, it's very little time and it's a little bit of a tussle back and forth. What I rather do is there's a translation of the Quran by Dr. Mustafa Khattab, he's a Canadian scholar. Amazing translation. I don't mind reading that with you, sharing certain chapters with you. When you have questions, I can just answer them directly. Because look, fundamentally, we're here to have a bit of fun with atheists and discuss. But where I see someone that's very genuine like you are, even if you're going to ultimately disagree with me, no problem at all. I'm willing to give you my time, and so is Hamza, because ultimately we want guidance for you just like we want guidance for ourselves.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Can you see the private chat?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you just put down your WhatsApp number or your email address, and then me and Hamza will get into contact.
Let's see.
Can you see it?
No, I see it. I have like 3 different emails.
Anyone you like, mate. Pick one. Pick an email, any email.
Put down your WhatsApp number with the American 00 whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's the best way I think we could contact you.
Here's my email.
All right.
Yeah. And you know, Hamza, maybe if you can share, when you used to be a militant atheist, I mean, what advice would you I'm not saying Landon is a militant atheist.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who's looking? And
I'm going to be honest with you. I was never a militant atheist. I never cared enough.
okay.
I was never bothered.
I thought you were an atheist though.
No, I was an atheist, but I wasn't a kind of walking around telling people who believed in God didn't exist, and it's not. I wasn't this kind of thing. I was an atheist in the sense of.
Did you believe that there was no God?
At one point.
Interesting.
So I went from atheism to agnosticism to deism to theism. So it was a kind of progression. So when I first didn't believe in a creator, it wasn't because I was denying a creator. I didn't care. So I think that's the only word I could say. Do you believe in God? No, not really. Why not? Don't care. So that would be an atheist. And then when someone said, oh, look at creation, reality, the universe, this kind of things, contemplate, reflect, do you think this all came by chance and all this kind of stuff? I was like, well, because I didn't have a militant stance, I was like, fair enough. Let's have a look at these things. And I was like, yeah, fair enough. I'll concede the idea. There must be something that caused the universe to exist, but I'm not saying it's God. I don't believe in your man-made religions created to control the masses, the opium of the people, and that kind of flex. And then so I ended up in a deism position where I had a detached creator, which made no sense to me. So then I had to move on to theism, which then obviously I investigated religion, and then obviously I determined Islam was the only truth. Ta-da.
Yeah.
That's the way I do it. So, the way that Landon is doing it is perfect.
Yeah.
Open-minded, hear what's got to be said. And I'll be honest with you, I do always say this to.
Did he freeze for you?
Yeah.
Oh, don't say that.
I was confused. I'm like, wait, did I freeze?
At what point did I freeze? At what point did I freeze?
You went into this weird position, like.
What point did I freeze? Oh my God, what was I saying? Ah,
the point where you said that you're going to be buying all of us the new iPad.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that point.
Yeah, so basically, just be open-minded and just take things on their merit, and as it comes to you, take things in bite-sized portions. Don't try to do everything at once. Don't start going into miracles and hadith. Just first of all, start with the basics. Start with the existence of a creator. Whatever that creator may be, it may be. Do you get me? And then progress from that point. Because it's hard to go into religion and all these things without believing a creator. Do you get me?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't freeze again then, did I?
No, you didn't. Landon, I just sent you an email, so you should be getting something, and then we'll be in contact. I would like to actually have this thing. I'm not sure if Hamza has this idea, but I wanted to do this thing where we take out the Quran in English and we have like an atheist like Landon, and we just have like not debate, but the person's reading it. We have a bit of discussion. We do one surah at a time, one chapter at a time. Maybe this is something for the future.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I've also got that other atheist guy. The one I took off TikTok, Abdion. He tried to come on the arena on Friday, but his internet was so bad. And again, he's in the US, and we could probably do them together.
Yeah.
He's been memorizing Quran. He's been reading Quran. And then he's been challenging the claims of Muslims about science in the Quran. Do you get me? It's a kind of mishmash.
Yeah.
And when he came onto the arena, he came with the point about, the Quran says that the earthquakes, mountains stop earthquakes and all that business. Yeah. Do you get me? So it was like, no, we don't say that.
Yeah.
So this is why I always say, whenever I speak to somebody like Landon, for example, try to forget what Muslims may have told you. Just try to do what we're saying. It might help. That's what I would say. But yeah, we'll definitely be in touch with you, Landon.
A quick question to Landon, which isn't related to this particular live stream. I just have this totally random question. Yeah. When I went to the United States a few years ago, I felt there was religiosity in the air, right? Like, I was in Texas after all. Is it religious where you are? Is it a religious thing?
A bit. Especially, I work at a very religious place. I think there are 3 Muslims, a couple atheists, and then the rest are Christians. And it's like an office of 100. So where I work is definitely very Christian. But when I start walking around day-to-day things, I don't really notice it.
Okay.
Okay. I always find Christians can muddy the waters of theism. That when an atheist is traumatized or irritated by the arguments presented by Christians, that they think all religious people use those same kind of arguments. Because I've had atheists using arguments that a Christian would use, or trying to refute arguments a Christian would present. Do you get me?
Yeah.
All right, Landon, we're going to let you go, mate.
All right.
It's been lovely speaking to you, man. Very pleasant. And something.
It's the day there, isn't it? So it's not good evening.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
I'm giving you good evening from me and good afternoon to you.
Good night to you guys, then.
That's it. Nice one. Take care, Landon. Ta-ra,
You
buddy.
too, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Right. He's a really nice guy, man. We need to have, you see, we keep attracting like the militant atheists. We need to also get the nice ones. And
the next guy is going to come across mixture.
What do you mean?
Think he's nice, some loaded points, but we'll see. We had a really good discussion with him on the arena, I believe. Long discussion, maybe an hour. I think he took up. Think he's very good with him, the doctor. But the doctor's not ready yet. So anyway, I'm going to bring him on.
You know, just on a totally side point, yeah. I just randomly came across yesterday a video of Dr. Imran from 11 years ago. He has a YouTube channel which is ancient, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And he looks so young. It's amazing.
We keep telling him to resurrect it, man. We keep telling him to resurrect it because
he's so refuting one of these common scientific, embryology stuff. He just smashed it, and that was
Christian Prince 11 years ago.
Oh, we don't mention that name.
We do. Hopefully he will appear on one of our streams so we can rip him.
Really? Okay.
Oh yeah, I'd love him to come on, man. Just rip him. Honestly.
Yeah, but you know what it is, Hamza? You know what it is? I have this rule, right? If people mock Islam, I just don't deal with them. I don't care. If they mock Islam, anything other than that, they want to challenge, argue, fight. I love that. I love those fights, yeah. But mocking Islam, mocking Allah, and I find him very, he mocks a lot. So, I can't deal with people like that.
No, I'll chew him up, mate.
Yeah, but I don't have the patience. I don't have the patience with them.
No, bro. We would chew him up in front of all his fangirls and boys. That's it. We would show him he talks absolute dribble. Honestly, drivel, complete. And because some people, Christians think they're carrying the flag of Christian Prince like he's like their savior, like he's their man. No Muslim can argue with this guy. And we know why he does it on his pal talk. He cuts them off and all that business. Fine, done. Come over, mate. You won't have your control.
CP's a bad gin.
No, but seriously, just chew him up, mate. Chew him up. Chew up David Wood. Just chew him up in front of their people. I had a debate with David Wood, on his Facebook page a while back on the age of Aisha Anha, and he blocked me. All his fanboys and girls watching, and he blocked me from responding to his comments, and then he started acting like I'd run away.
Oh, yeah.
Now look at the topic I went against him. One of the pretty brutal topics to go against David Wood is the age of Aisha Anha. I smashed him. I was bringing scientific medicals and this, that, journals and all sorts about puberty and menstruation and all this kind of stuff, and he blocked me and then acted like he'd won.
Yeah, the thing is, look, at the end of the day, this is all if you have a crowd like he does, he just wins over his crowd. He doesn't care about anybody who's watching, who's objective, who's looking at who's winning. He just wants to win over his crowd. And the other thing is that if you look at him and these other types of characters, they're just in it for the money.
No, I agree. But the problem you get,
and
I'll give you an example. We've got a guy called Gavin, who, mashallah, he's not a necessarily CP fanboy or a David Wood fanboy. He's just somebody who's been kind of interested in Islam and he's looked at the debates and such. But he's clawing from that. He's from that poisoned well. Now he started bringing David Wood things, quoting David. Oh, this David Wood guy seems to know what he's talking about. Do you get me? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we have to crush him, man. You know, like for example, people come and say this particular person. Yeah, we dealt with them. You know, people go to me, oh, Hatun, you want to talk to Hatun like that? Go watch my video with Hatun. I expose her as a hypocrite. Just go watch it. I don't need to do that again. I don't need to do it twice. Just do it once. Just crush them once on whatever point it is they're trying to make and move on. Right, Isan. You're too nice. There's no good cops in the room, bro. There's no good cops. And Subhoor's looking hungry, but we're gonna bring you on anyway. All right, bro.
Hi, Subhoor. Hi,
mate?
Hamza. Thanks for having me on again.
Not a problem.
So, okay, well, I think I'll have to start off by saying I actually disagree with virtually everything you've said, Subhoor. So this should make a very interesting chat. Okay. So you mentioned about nihilism. You're saying about how there's no purpose or meaning to life if you're an atheist. Is that what you said?
Objective.
Yes. Okay. Well, actually, I could switch that round, because if you're an atheist, you accept this is your only life, and so because of that, you want to make as much of it as you can, and you know, that's quite a common philosophy. And Hamza, you said earlier that theists don't have you know, you can't be a nihilist and a theist, but if you look at it, the theist lifestyle.
Shall I repeat what I said? Shall I repeat what I said? So you don't misquote me.
Okay,
I
sorry.
said.
I think. All right.
Theism.
Yeah.
Can't lead to nihilism.
Sure. Okay.
That's what I said.
Yeah. I think that's what you said. Okay. So sorry if I misquoted you, but yeah. So
No I'll correct you.
When I think about it, when you have theism is, if you divide this life into this life and then the afterlife, if you happen to believe in an afterlife. Okay. So if you're a theist, in many ways, you can actually be a nihilist for this current life. And this is the only life you're guaranteed to have. And I remember a Christian woman saying, you know, that she didn't care if she died. So if she was walking along the pavement and a car came off the road and was about to hit her, she wouldn't care, because she would die and then she'd go and be with Jesus, which is what she really wanted. You know, I can say, and also, you know, as a Muslim, you have your paradise, which is what, you know, many amazing things in paradise. So, you know, if you're going to be, you wouldn't, if you're a Muslim, why would you care if you're about to die? Because if you've led a good life as a Muslim, you're going to go to paradise and then.
All right, can I just stop you a second, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Because you're just taking one point here. A nihilist is not just talking about dying; it's everything.
No, I mean, nihilism is in. There's no intrinsic meaning or anything like this.
To anything at all. Okay,
well, in which case you need to agree that there are grades of nihilism. So, you know, you could be a very weak nihilist for, you know, for some things, because in a way, okay, I would agree that if you're an atheist, you have to have a very, very weak form of nihilism, in that there's no external meaning to your life. So I don't believe that I was put on this earth for any reason other than the fact that my parents wanted children. Okay. So whatever meaning I have, is I've given it to my life. Okay. So I create meaning for my life, and I want to I know I'm only here for however many decades, and I don't believe in an afterlife. I think that when I die, that's the end. So I want to make the most of this life so that, you know, to improve the well-being of people around me, and to, you know, to leave a legacy. Because when I go, I want something nice to be remembered by. So I do value a lot of things. I value life. I value people. I value science. I value the arts. You know, all these kinds of things. Yeah. So you know,
do you value taking over say a country, right, and occupying it, subjecting its people to concentration camps, like we have atheists who are doing that to Muslims in East Turkestan? Do you think that that's a valuable, good thing to do?
Well, you've gone off on a bit of a tangent, but No, I don't think what's happening to the Uyghurs is a good thing. Definitely not. No. So
okay, so you believe doing science, sitting in London or wherever you are, is a good thing, and doing what the Chinese government's doing to the Uyghurs, who are also atheists like you are, that's a bad thing. You believe that to be true?
I think what they're doing is bad, but I actually think I'd say you're being a bit dishonest. I think you need to understand that. Let me just explain. Atheism is just the non-acceptance of your God claim. Okay, so atheists don't accept any God. You don't accept any. You don't accept thousands and thousands of God except one. Okay, and the other thing is because I know this comes up a lot. They talk about, oh, what about the Nazis? What about the communists? You know, a lot of them were atheists, but the thing about the Nazis and the communists, they took out religion. Now, please let me finish. They took out religion and they replaced it with their own religion.
It's on 1 second. You spoke for a while. I was addressing your earlier point. Now you raised a different point. And the reason I was asking these questions was to steelman you, essentially. I'm just trying to understand your position.
Sure.
So I didn't bring it up as a random example. Those are brutal atheists. Those are atheists. So when we are speaking about, for example, this scenario where you're an atheist and you're saying, I want to do science and science is a good thing. Assalamu alaikum, Imran.
Welcome, Salam. How are you guys doing? You
Hi,
okay?
Imran.
We can all agree.
Nice to see you. I'm glad you're on, mashallah. That's
Nice to
good.
see
We can
you
all
again.
agree having Dr. Imran in the stream is an objectively good thing.
So now you have two doctors here.
I don't know. I didn't realize.
Okay, so you said you have value, and because you only live once, and you have value things. So what you value is good, doing science. What they value is bad, killing Muslims, raping Muslims, doing all this type of stuff they're doing. However, isn't it the case that from your position, they're both subjective? Your view is subjective, their view is subjective, and there's no difference between the two.
Okay, well, actually, now if you want to move on to morality, actually, then I mean, my opinion is all morality is subjective. I don't believe there is any real objective morality, because we're all different. We all have our own opinions, and I don't think appealing to a God will actually solve that. And what I'm saying is, okay, if you look at it, the way to discuss morality is, firstly, everybody has to define what they mean by morality, and morality is different according to different people. So, to me, morality is about improving well-being. Okay, other people may feel that morality is just doing what God wants them to do, regardless of what the consequences in this life are. If it's what God wants, then that's moral. So, and I would disagree with that. That's why I wouldn't have I couldn't discuss that with somebody. And if somebody came in and said morality is any behavior that increases your wealth, I'd say, well, that's not my morality, so we can't have a discussion on that. So the reason, when you have morality,
can I just make one point? Can I just make one point? When you came on the live stream, you said everything that we've said is wrong, but we claimed under atheism, morality is subjective. So we're not wrong about that, are we?
But you're wrong in the sense that you said it's subjective in atheism, but I think you were implying that under theism it's objective. Whereas my opinion.
Okay, so Ehsan, give us a little bit of credit. Even if you can show theism has subjective morality, at least we're correct that atheism leads to subjective morality.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that. Yeah, so atheism leads to subjective morality.
So we're not wrong about everything, right?
No, okay. Well, I mean, I disagreed with. I never said. I said I disagreed with you on a lot of things. That's what I really meant. Yeah.
Okay, so now let's deal with another contradiction. You said that it's bad what the atheist communist regime is doing to the Muslims, and doing science is good. But then you just said they're both subjective.
Yeah, because for me, it's bad because it's bad for well-being. That's because I define morality as well-being. So you can talk lots of things. You can say, we can all say murder is bad, but then you could have, Jeffrey Dahmer join your live stream and he'll go on about how murder is good. So it is all subjective. So we need to start off by defining what is morality. To me, it's well-being. So if we all sit down, if we all agree that well-being is the basis of morality, is the best basis for morality, then what will happen is we can then make objective statements. So it's like if you had a chess game, you don't have to play chess, but if we are going to play chess, we have to agree on the rules first, and then once we agree on the rules, then we can decide on what is an objectively good chess move and what is an objectively bad chess move.
But say you're sitting in front of Xi Jinping, right? And you say, I believe morality is well-being, right? I believe morality is well-being, maximum well-being for everyone, or maximum pleasure, happiness. And he says, for me, the highest goal from which he derives objective derivatives is the supremacy of the Communist Party of China.
Yeah, so we can't agree on morality then. So I wouldn't have a morality discussion with Xi Jinping because we disagree on things.
Yes, but what I'm trying to get to is that you'd have no argument against him. You couldn't say anything.
Yeah,
his views are just as valid as yours.
He has he has his views, and I'll have my views, and there's no
adjudicating.
There's no there's no set point in between. It's the same way that which is why you have laws, and that's why you have international laws, because people get together and you have to agree on what's maximally best. So it's the same way that if you'd had a murderer in court and that murderer had said, I don't see anything wrong with murder, you're not going to sit there forever trying to debate with him about whether murder is right or wrong, because you have to have a set of laws that have been put together for various reasons, and under those laws, murder is something which would be punishable because it leads, because it leads to a negative well-being.
Okay, can I ask you a question? What's your moral anchor?
Well-being. I'll say well-being. So the way I
what does that mean? So do you think drinking alcohol is a bad thing then? Yeah.
Okay. So let me explain. In moderation, I don't think it's immoral to drink alcohol. In a small amount, in large amounts, then I would say it is, because
why did you switch to immoral from well-being? Because well-being implies healthy, good for you.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, let me go back to that then. If we're going to go,
so you're saying drinking a small amount of alcohol is good for you?
It has been. I mean, there was some evidence about that. I think it was mainly raw red wine may have had antioxidant effects, which could have some healthier, have some healthier heart. So that was some evidence, but there's no doubt that in terms of health, alcohol, especially at higher levels, is bad, because it's bad for your liver. It has all kinds of problems for other parts of your body, and also you don't have problems with your family, because your families don't want to look after a drunk, and there's society problems as well. So in tiny amounts it can have a slight beneficial help. So
you wouldn't say alcohol is immoral, even though what it can do to society and people within that society?
I mean, a tiny amount.
Yes, I think you're only saying that. If I said to you about heroin, what about heroin?
Well, there's no good benefit to heroin. With heroin is different, because heroin has a much greater negative effect on society than alcohol does.
Okay,
I think.
Right. Maybe I went too far with heroin. Cocaine, ecstasy. Let's say ecstasy. Ease.
Okay, so ecstasy. I mean, ecstasy is one of the softer drugs, and so it's not as bad as, say, heroin. So which is why the penalties for ecstasy are less than it would be for heroin. But yeah, I mean, it does have certainly negative consequences. People have died from taking just even one.
Ecstasy, you would say ecstasy is immoral because it's bad for your well-being, yeah?
I'd say ecstasy is bad for your well-being. And if you agree well-being is the basis of morality, then it would be immoral.
Well, that's you. You believe that, isn't it?
That's me.
And so the last one. What about smoking?
I would say smoking is bad for your well-being, because
so it's immoral.
Well, okay. Let me just say it's bad for your well-being. So because I feel that well-being is my basis for morality, I would say that it's immoral. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
I mean, things change. I mean,
can I just ask
cannabis was different, because cannabis was, for many years it was thought to be really bad, and now the evidence shows it's not as bad in some ways, and it's got some benefits for things like chronic pain, that type of thing.
Yeah. See, to me, it seems your moral anchor seems to be what's legal and what isn't. But anyway.
No, it's well-being. Well-being. So. Right.
So can I just, Ihsan, welcome again. Just really wanted to, I've missed the discussion. So if I say some things you've already covered, my apologies, just let me know. But it's an interesting, we're talking about the Uyghurs and then we're talking about well-being as being the basis for your moral worldview. And the obviously someone like the ruler of the Communist Party could make the argument that actually what I'm looking out for is the well-being of the 1 billion people within my country, and they're a threat from this minority, and therefore it's important for their well-being of this large majority to take rid of, or to take care of, or to get rid of this small minority that potentially can be quite harmful for the cohesion of the society, and maybe use things like terrorism as a pretext, or even actually let's allow him that there are some violent elements to these groups, sure. Even though I don't really accept that, but let's allow that.
Sure. And the same argument is used in Muslim countries for Shia and for other Islam sects and non-Muslims as well. So yeah.
So Shias, so a bit of a red herring. The Shias and the Sunnis have lived together for millennia, and the what we see, the problems we see now are quite a modern phenomena. So I don't really accept this sort of characterization. But getting back to the point of using the well-being as the reason, as the moral sort of foundation for this, what would you say to Xi Jinping if he gave this argument that, look, I'm looking out for the well-being of the 1 billion population that I have. We have a minority of these people who are potentially subversive, dangerous for the society and cohesion of China and the Communist Party. How would you be able to argue against that position from your standpoint, or would you have to concede that the greater well-being is the well-being of the greater number of people, or is it or would you say no, actually it's not the number but just well-being in general? Then how would you argue this point?
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'd argue because it's not just about the number of people, because well-being is principally enshrined in amongst human rights. So if you say, I'd argue about that if you'd had, say, 100 people and they wanted to see one person dead, then we could say that if you kill that person, that would be great for 100 people. But then what about that one person's human rights? And so in that case, that person's human rights are greater than the pleasure of the 100. So if I was in China, if I had a one-to-one with Xi Jinping, I would say that it's immoral and it's not just me. It's against human rights, and they may have legitimate concerns about as you mentioned, some possible terrorist threats from the Uyghurs, but what they're doing is it isn't right, and in many ways it's counterproductive. It's given them negative press around the world. There have been sanctions against China for that. So that that's what I would argue. And of course, I couldn't force him to change his opinion, but that's what I would argue.
So taking that argument and applying it, because now you've taken numbers out of the equation, which is really interesting.
Yeah, because the human rights is more important than that. Yeah.
Okay. So in that case, then, if you have somebody who say is a murderer, or is suspected of being a murderer, and the court convicts that individual, now we're taking the numbers out of the context. Is it okay to take that individual's life? Because obviously that is not good for their well-being. Or are you going to stick with your principle that you applied with Xi Jinping?
Well, you see, my principle is it's all subjective morality, but because you're not going to get everybody to have the same moral opinion. So the only way to resolve that is to look at human rights and look at what's best for most people, for the greater number of people in that case, once you've taken human rights into account. And in that case, so if you're dealing with a murderer and that person doesn't think they're doing wrong, then the correct thing would be to, I'm not a fan of capital punishment, but I think the correct thing then would be to imprison them, principally because they're a threat to others. And we need to think of other people when we're dealing with people who are a threat.
Yes, I just wanted to point. The reason I gave the other example is because you took numbers out of the equation, but actually, in responding to this murderer, you brought numbers into the equation. You said actually better for the greater number of people, to quote you. So I think,
but I did say human rights first. Human rights of
sure,
the
but,
rest first, and then the
the
numbers.
basis of your morality was well-being. Human rights is interesting because I would love to see how you justify any of the basis for human rights at all. But what you're arguing against with Xi Jinping and the Uyghurs was actually, you would argue against the numbers being important. But actually, when it came to the murder of the individual and say a court, you argued actually it was better for the greater number of people that individual was, and you used use imprisonment. So I'd say that actually they're opposite. You're holding opposite concepts at the same time to try and justify different scenarios.
First of all was human rights, and then I used the numbers bit second. So there's like a hierarchy.
So numbers is important in deciding.
Numbers is important in deciding lower down the pecking order. Yeah.
Okay, so that's probably the argument that Xi Jinping would make. So I think that what I'm trying to highlight in that part, and it's interesting because actually we were talking about nihilism, and I don't know how we got on to how you guys have maybe
Subhoor raised that.
I'm raising moral nihilism.
Okay, so not for just really wanted to
existential nihilism. You have moral nihilism. You have nihilism from a cosmology point of view, and
so maybe should we go back to nihilism then and leave China and stuff and.
No, so Imran, can you elaborate on that point? Because I thought it was brilliant. There's an inconsistency there, and then you were making some points about, okay, how would Xi Jinping make his point? So please carry on.
Because when you make your basis of your morality well-being, you say that there is something that you're using as an objective measure, which is the well-being of the individual. Okay. Fair enough. Let's take that as an example. So what you then said was that you'd argue with Xi Jinping. You'd say, actually, because it's bad for these people, we should not be doing this. And I gave the example of actually what he could argue to you or give you an argument for or counter argument for is, look, I'm trying to protect 1 billion people in my society from this element that's potentially dangerous in my mind. And so the greater good, i.e. the greater number of people who are benefited, i.e. their well-being is safeguarded by removing this small threat, is my rationale for this. So I used your well-being example to give you how that could be used by Xi Jinping. You said the numbers was not important. And so then I gave the example, okay, now let's take that idea if the numbers are not important and apply it to the individual in the court who's a murderer, for example. And are we allowed to take their life? I gave the example of taking the life for what they have done. Obviously, it's bad for that individual's well-being. And then you brought in the human rights aspect, and then you said for the greater good, i.e. the society, and that's again referring to numbers, is better that this individual is incarcerated. You changed it to incarceration. And I was highlighting that actually these are inconsistencies in standards that you're using across the two examples.
And I tried to explain that by saying that there's a hierarchy. So you have the human rights first, and then there'd be the numbers later on. Providing it's a equal human rights for everybody else. So when you talk about the murderer, you've got the human rights of the general public to be able to go out for a walk and not run the risk of being stabbed by a murderer. Their right to life, their right to prosper, and so all these their human rights would be greater than the right to freedom of the murderer in that case.
So can I say the same thing to you, but I'll say the human rights of the greater population within China is more important than the human rights of these individuals who are incarcerated in the camps. See, the thing with this argument, Ihsan, is that it doesn't hold. Doesn't actually get you to do things that you would consider as intuitively as a good thing. You can actually justify anything with that. If to give a really extreme example, I mean, the Uyghurs is an extreme example. Using your well-being idea and the concept of human rights, i.e. the human rights of the majority trumps the human rights of an individual, i.e. the right to life, for example, or the right to family life in the person who's incarcerated. What you're arguing, actually, we can remove this person's human rights and even their life if there's some greater good, a greater number of people are being benefited, their human rights are being protected, or their lives are being protected, and that would be the same argument. But you seem to sort of sway between saying one thing is bad, but then the reason you say that is bad doesn't apply to another scenario. So it's an inconsistency in applying the thought process.
Okay, I'm trying to be consistent as possible. So what I'm saying is, what's happening in China was bad because they're being so far more extreme that they could achieve, whatever threat they may have perceived, that can be managed through far less extreme ways. So, for example, if you mention the murderer, you would incarcerate the murderer because they're a much greater threat to society, and so the murderer's individual rights to freedom are less. Whereas if you'd had somebody who plays loud music and then you send this person to prison for that, then I think a lot of people would say, that's far too extreme. You've violated that person's human rights by sending them to prison for playing loud music. Whereas there will be less extreme ways of achieving the resolution of that problem. So there are ways around it, and I think when you say subjective, if you look at the same crime in different countries, it can be punished in many different ways. So that's why when you have something like the International Declaration of Human Rights, we can that enshrines people's human rights. It helps us to make judgments on these cases.
Sorry, could I just say one thing before you brothers
Sure.
step in? So I just wanted to highlight the way that I know that you're trying to be consistent, but actually the way it was coming across was actually, I think it was pretty clear that it's difficult to reconcile those positions. But what I wanted to really, one of the things that, and you're a medical doctor, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that you've probably come across often is when you're speaking to the suicidal person, that person who is, presenting and they're sort of telling you that they're having thoughts of committing suicide, and even they may have plans, they even have got the implements, got a noose under the bed, whatever it might be. And one of the things that I often ask, and you probably asked a similar question, is what stopped you from carrying out the act? If you were ready to go, what stopped you? And it's really interesting to ask this because it gives you an idea of if there's any protective factors in their suicidality. And one of the things that often people do is they look at things that they find valuable as the reason for not doing it. So they say, I've got parents, they'd miss me, or they say that, like if you even had, who's going to feed the dog? Literally it comes down to something that they don't want to cause some distress to something that they find valuable within their life. And so I from that, what I get is that intuitively, we know that things have value in the world, in the universe. And when you have an atheistic worldview, ultimately, although you can, people often give themselves senses of value and senses of purpose. But this is, again, I would say, without trying to be rude at all, but this is almost delusional to assign yourself a purpose and a value. It's like if you made an AI robot and you released it into the world and it gave itself its own purpose. Yes, it could be satisfied with that, but ultimately, the thing that created it or brought it about would be the thing that they would have to arbitrate on what its purpose is. But we have this intrinsically that when I look at my daughter's eyes, or you look at your family members, you see value in the human being. We intrinsically know human beings are valuable. We appreciate things like beauty, and these are values that just as human beings, I would say they talk to the fitra, or they talk to our natural disposition. Now, from an atheistic worldview, I don't think there's an explanation for this phenomena. So I was wondering, from your perspective, how do you come about justifying the existence of that phenomena for yourself?
Okay, I mean, obviously, I don't believe in the fitra, but I would ask, why would an animal risk its life to save its young? Because it's part of its genetic, it's part of its genetic makeup. These are things that have been ingrained through various civilizations, over the years. That's what I meant to say. And they talk about you need. Because I think we can probably say animals don't have a religion. So you look at why would some animals act in a way that may look like to them not good for their life, but it's better for their little group. So why would meerkats go on sentry duty? Because they look more beyond their own life. They look for the life of their own group, and so there is this this kind of altruism of helping others of your kind, that helps to improve your own survival. And you can actually, if you're an entirely selfish individual, you can, it's in some cases, it's best for your own interests to be altruistic. And that's how you have the development of social animals. And it's how animals, certain dogs can be trained. I mean, you talk about humans, but I know many atheists who are very strongly for animal rights, and they are vegan. And even the ones who aren't vegan, virtually every one of them opposes non-stunned slaughter. So you can see the value in living things. So I wouldn't see anything wrong with smashing up some rocks in my garden to make a garden ornament. But if it's a sentient creature that's got that can feel pain, I'd want it to be treated fairly. And that's
so you're a vegan. So you're vegan?
No, I'm an omnivore, but I make sure that I try and get meat from organic places. I would never eat a meat that's not been stunned before killing.
So you think killing an animal is moral or immoral?
I would think I'd say it's moral if it's for the purpose of food, yes. But
what about the well-being of the animal? What about the well-being of the animal?
Because, well, I mean, if it's treated fairly, and certainly for most of them, they're farmed, so they're given a much better life in a farm.
So give it a nice life, but then kill it. That's not good for its well-being, is it?
Kill it humanely.
But kill it. You're killing it, though. It doesn't want to die.
Yeah, in a humane manner. So overall, its life would be better than being.
Does it want to die?
I don't think it knows.
It doesn't know.
And if it did know, then if there was an animal that did know, then I wouldn't eat it, because it would have a slightly different thing. They'd be like,
so you don't worry about the well-being of an animal. Is that right?
No, I do worry about the well-being, which is why I wouldn't eat an animal that had been killed inhumanely.
How do you know that?
So you only eat animals which are dumb enough not to understand that they're going to be killed.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah, well, I don't eat humans. I don't eat chimpanzees. I don't eat gorillas. So yeah, I'd say yes.
So you don't think pigs are intelligent?
Well, they have an intelligence, but they don't. I don't feel it's high enough for me to not eat a creature like that. There's sheep. They've got some intelligence to them. Cows got a bit of intelligence to them.
Because there's another, and I'm seeing this as an inconsistency, but I may be wrong.
Sure.
Because you argued that because you talked about animals have evolved these traits that are genetic from their genetics to look after the young, sort of instincts. You seem to argue that what hardwired are genetically sort of predispositions that are just there, and this is not a sign of any actual association of value from the animal or morality. It's just a reflex, if anything. And obviously, and we know animals eat other animals. Human beings, if we take your worldview, are also part of the same chain, and therefore they would also eat other animals if they're an omnivorous creature. We don't assign moral calculations to what a lion does when it eats a gazelle, for example. So the question would be, why would you apply moral calculations to what a human does from your worldview when it eats another animal? I don't even know why we're having that discussion. If we're evolved to eat other animals, as you say, and we don't judge a lion when it eats a gazelle, why are we judging a human being who's also evolved to eat other animals from your perspective? Why are we applying that calculation to them in the first place?
Okay, because the way I'd answer it is humans are we've evolved to have a much more powerful brain, and we're much better at picking up sentient organisms. So we can detect that other animals feel pain, and it's also the choice. The lion's not going to go vegetarian out of care for the gazelle or something. It's how it's evolved. So Whereas we know that because animals feel pain, we should, if we do slaughter them, it should be done in a humane way.
What gives you the right to kill an animal to eat it? Just so according to your worldview, just trying to understand it. Why do you think your value is higher than the value of the animal? Just trying to understand.
Sure. Okay.
Because someone asked that in the comment section, so I thought it was quite interesting.
Okay.
Can I interrupt that thought process just for 1 second? Sorry, sure. Before you go there, so I'm just thinking about your answer, and that's why I was a bit slow, and I was trying to sort of digest what you're saying. And I could be misrepresenting you here, so please tell me if I am. So what you seem to be saying is that the reason that to kill an animal humanely is because human beings can sense or pick up on their signs of distress in a way that other animals maybe can't because of our evolved brain. Yeah. And so it seems to be that you're arguing the reason we kill them gently is because it makes us feel better about killing them.
Yeah, I'd say that's part of it, because when you see somebody else suffering, when you see if I see a person suffer, I see an animal suffering, that makes me feel bad inside, even if I had nothing to do with it. When you see people who are ill, people who've had all kinds of horrible things happen to them, you feel bad inside, because that's your empathy which you've had. So if you're going to eat an animal, I wouldn't want to see that animal suffer, and it's for that reason that I wouldn't shoot an animal for sport, because whatever, even if the animal died humanely, I wouldn't shoot it for sport, but as I would shoot it for food, if it could be done, obviously if it was done humanely. And this obviously
why
just goes to the
why
point
wouldn't you shoot it for sport? Why wouldn't you shoot it for sport if one shot takes it out? Why wouldn't you shoot it for sport? Didn't feel no pain.
I mean, I just wouldn't. That'd be my opinion.
Why?
And obviously this goes back to the subjectivity here, because some people would shoot it for sport, whereas I wouldn't, because I wouldn't be happy about killing an animal just for fun.
So you're sort of agreeing with the Islamic position on many things,
yeah.
killing humanely, and also, although we have different concepts of
that's
this.
good things. Yeah.
Sure. So the thing that I don't really, because you talked about altruism within animals, and I know Subhoor speaks a lot on this, but human beings do things that for other human beings that will have no impact on themselves as an individual, or even their sort of descendants, for example. So I can send some support for somebody who's living on the other side of the world, and these individuals that I've helped or assisted, I can never expect in my generation or the generations to follow to receive some sort of reciprocal help from them at all.
Yeah.
Even in the face of helping somebody who I know that the help will not actually impact them in any way, apart from the fact that I've helped them, making them feel better, there will be no other reciprocal benefit for me for that.
Yeah. Because we have empathy for others. Yeah.
Absolutely, we have empathy for others. So the thing that with that is it points against this evolutionary type of argument that we've evolved our altruism as an evolutionary mechanism for the benefits of, because then you have to take, because if our actions and our intentions and our behaviors are all evolutionary in their origin, then you really have to take moral considerations out of it. Because if evolutionarily it was judged valuable for us to think that it was okay to eat other human beings, even in your own family, if that was how we had evolved, then there wouldn't be any judgment of that, because that's just a response. Like we don't judge a lion when it eats when it eats its own cubs, for example, the male lion will kill the cubs of another male lion from a female that it's actually trying to mate with.
Because it's in the best interest of passing on their genes to do that. So
sure. So this is exactly the point. So the consideration for genetic propagation is limited in the sense of its scope. Now, human beings will help somebody who's literally on the other side of the planet where there's no genetic link possibly that's going to arrive from that. And I think that you have to then find another reason for that mechanism for this to be the case. There's no genetic link there? There's no genetic benefit there. So where are you getting your idea that this is? Now, I would say this is because human beings understand other human beings are intrinsically valuable to put my cards on the table because of other considerations, and I would say they were considerations of a higher power, higher purpose. But how do you, as a materialist, I assume, I could be wrong about that, but as a materialist, how do you then justify that sort of behavior? Are you altruism where there's no reciprocal benefit?
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think in many ways, I agree with you on that statement about how we have the empathy and the altruism. I think where we may disagree is where that all came from. You said something about it was imbued by a higher power. I don't agree so, because I think there are many ways in which altruism, helping others, does help you as an individual. If you had, as an example is, if you have two people who live on an island and they hate each other, it's in their interests to work together, because if they work together, they're more likely to catch prey, and one of them can go to sleep while the other one watches the sleeping one, just to check they're not going to be attacked by an animal. So and this is what happens. This is how civilizations developed. Once people realized it's in everyone's best interests to work together and to solve problems. So even if you don't care about other people, it's in your interests to at least act as if you cared about other people, so that it helps you. And what we're seeing around the world is just part of that.
Isan, I have to interrupt you, because I have to think about other people, and the crowd said it's time to go, my friend. All right. So until next time.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Take care. There you go. Oh, that was in the spirit of thinking of other people.
Yeah. I was just going to say, Imran's frozen, I think.
No, he's not. No, he's all right. He's all right.
Oh, he's all right now. I was just going to say it was very important point that you made, Imran, about essentially kin selection and reciprocal altruism, what they are trying to push out. And something which I think can sort of add to this point is the way that altruism is defined from a selfish gene point of view is not the altruism that we're referring to. We're referring to altruism as in you want to help someone, not for something that you're going to get in return, but ultimately the other person as an end in of themselves, not as a proximate sort of mechanism for your help, right? So even if somebody tries to come up with this idea that, look, ultimately we have to work together, blah, 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 because it will come back to us, that's not even altruism. That's just simply selfish genes propagating their DNA through strategies of kin selection and reciprocal altruism, which even if that explanation was correct, it doesn't cover the other areas that you actually highlighted.
Can I just say something about Ihsan and why I got rid of him? Because some people think, oh, you conceded. To be honest with you, we went a little bit off track to what the original point of the stream was. He showed quite a few inconsistencies, and he's been on a while. So and when the crowd start giving the thumbs down, even though it's not the arena, we have to abide by the...
I think it was interesting because the inconsistencies are really clear, and that's the thing. It's really fascinating because obviously Ihsan is a really intelligent guy, and actually seems like a really nice guy. The problem I'm having is that how did you live with the cognitive dissonance of having these, inconsistent ideas? Absolutely, Shane, I completely agree. A lot of inconsistency, and I think when you get down to the nitty gritty, human beings, we like even the human rights concept, universal human rights. These are based on things that are not material, i.e., human beings are all equal, etc. I mean, where do we get this? I mean, Hamza's white. I'm a darker shade of brown than Subhoor is. We're different heights. We're different weights. Where is the equality? There is no equality in a material sense. There's something else that's got to make us equal in our own eyes for each other. And that's got to be something that's outside of whatever is material for us, because we're pointing to something and saying, this is what makes us equal, and that concept. And whatever that concept is, it isn't genetic. It's nothing in our genes that makes us equal, or in our atoms that makes us equal. I hope Allah guides Ihsan. And if he's around again, please come on to other segments.
Most definitely. So Okay, who's next? Oh, we've got Yellow Pete. I think we've had him on before. I'm not sure which. Oh, I just want to thank and welcome 2 new members we had. MashaAllah. I think it was Silver Lady, and I miss the other guy's name, to be honest. But anyway, welcome to the Pride. You are now a proud Denzian, supporting the channel. Much appreciated, inshallah. Okay. Right, and Yellow Pete's in the house.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear, sir. Where are you calling from?
Germany.
Germany. Okay, so you're 1 hour ahead of us, I assume.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah, it's 11:45 here.
Yeah. So 11:45. Okay. Well, welcome to the den.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. As an introduction, I wanted to address the question that you asked, which was, what does atheism have to offer? You know, you kind of asking for some positive presentation of why one should be an atheist. I think that first of all, it's the framing of the question is a little bit strange. It's kind of asking as if atheism is like something that I don't know, that you could simply choose to buy into in case it gave you enough benefits, right? So I think that's the wrong way to think about it. I think you should.
It's the opposite, mate. It's the opposite. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's the opposite. So, for example, people come to attack atheists come to me, challenging me on my Islam and my worldview, and my way of life, and my moral standard, and all of these things. And so, or what I'm asking, and which is what Brother Subhoor indicated, what you got. What have you got as a way of life? See, I don't believe. I put the claim out there, and you can challenge the claim. I don't mind. There's no way of life superior and better than Islam.
Yeah,
no
I'll come to that. I'll come to like a direct
All right,
comparison.
fantastic. All right, just so you know what we're doing. So what you're basically saying is, we're asking what as an atheist, what's the benefits of being an atheist?
Right.
What you got?
Okay,
what you got?
I'll shorten my first point then to simply saying that I do not think you should become an atheist for the sake of having some sort of benefit from it, right? If you're thinking of quote unquote becoming an atheist because I don't know, some people have mistreated you in your religion or something like that, or you simply want to do things that your religion forbids you. I think that's not a good reason to be an atheist, you know? You should be, if you're an atheist, it should be because you actually don't think it's true.
Okay,
right.
So
now,
just a quick point there. It's not just about the benefits, it's about what are the implications. So you just said something very interesting. You said truth, right? So is truth important to you?
Yeah, it's fairly high.
Okay, so do you believe it's coherent, and I'm being careful with my words, do you think it's coherent to be an atheist and to value truth? You think it's coherent? Okay, I'm going to explain to you why it's not coherent. Okay, so listen to this argument. Here's why it's not coherent. From an atheistic perspective, the only route that you can go down is the route of moral nihilism, which is the idea that moral statements are propositions which are neither true nor false, and truth ultimately is a moral good. It's good to follow truth as opposed to following falsehood, which is bad. Hence why it sounds self-evident when we say, of course you should believe that because that's true. Of course you should not believe that because that's not true. Because what we're essentially doing is we're calling to something that's good and we're stopping people from something that's bad. However, if atheism leads to moral nihilism, which is something which I believe is undeniable, and we can discuss about that, then truth itself, because following truth has no more intrinsic value than the intrinsic truth that, helping elderly people is good or whatever it is. Since morality becomes subjective, following truth no longer has intrinsic value. Therefore, it's not coherent to be an atheist and to have the belief that truth has intrinsic value.
Yeah, I think I understand your point. I think the word intrinsic sort of does a lot of work for you there. I think that the sense, so I think part of the definition of a value is that it's an attitude held by a particular subject, by some sort of agent, some thinking agent towards some sort of object or state of affairs, right? So if you're saying like a value, like if I'm thinking of a value, there's always somebody holding this value, right? I don't really know what it means for there to be a value that is not being held by anyone. Now, if by intrinsic value you mean something like it is being held, but it's got to be held by the creator of all things, right? Then it becomes intrinsic somehow. Then the definition of an intrinsic value is simply just sort of a God value, right? And then the claim boils down to, if there isn't a God, then there are no God values. And I would agree with that, right? Like, there are no God values if there's no God. That makes sense. But it turns out that the actual existence of such intrinsic values aren't really consequential to everyday life, right? With the conception, purely subjective conception of values, where values are attitudes that are being held by agents, you're not really getting into any quagmire that I can see. Although I would.
Okay, so far I agree with you, but you haven't touched the live wire which I've set up, and the live wire is that it's incoherent to be an atheist and believe in intrinsic value. Now, do you believe the statement that I said, that it's incoherent to be an atheist and believe in intrinsic value of truth, or say something else? Do you think that statement that I said is true or false?
I think in the sense that you mean it, it's true, because I think what you mean by intrinsic value is a value given by God, right? And so if that's simply what you mean,
a value that's grounded in something beyond the subjective experience, and the way that we ground it as Muslims is, of course, the creator. So you're right in that.
Do you think it could be potentially grounded in anything other than a theistic God?
Okay, here's why I believe it's impossible for there to be intrinsic value to be derived from something that's that's material, essentially, right? Something
not a God, right?
Not God, something in nature. So here's the problem. Firstly, if we say, okay, so here is a fact in nature, and from this fact we're going to derive a value, we'll end up with essentially the naturalistic fallacy. We can't go from facts to value, so we know we can't get it from nature. Now, one way that a human being may try and get it is try and say, well, look, what is the purpose of life from a Darwinian point of view? Even though it's subjective, it's essentially to propagate your genes and reproduce. Well, for that goal of survival and reproduction, you got to be a good person, because if you're not a good person, you'll end up getting murdered. And evolution punishes non-cooperators, and you can use these game theoretical models and all this type of stuff. The problem with that way of trying to ground intrinsic value from a Darwinian perspective is that it's contingent upon the socio-cultural factors. So like I think Imran was alluding to earlier, if those factors were different, there may be a situation in which eating a human being would be not frowned upon. It would be seen as perfectly normal. Someone died, well, that's some very good protein right there, and you just basically stick a fork in it, literally. Yeah. So from a Darwinian point of view, trying to ground intrinsic value in nature or something from the evolutionary process would again be a non-starter. So I believe, as a theist, that from a atheistic perspective, it's incoherent to intrinsically value anything.
Yeah, and I would say to that this kind of intrinsic value that you're describing, that sort of just resides in the thing itself, like regardless, like that would be there regardless whether anyone held it or not. That kind of value seems totally inconsequential and really not important to me. So yeah, I don't really care for that kind of value, and I presume that certain worldviews don't account for it, and that's fine with me. Okay. If we could so I got some small points, because atheism in and of itself obviously doesn't commit you to all that much in terms of views and practices, right? So it's not like you're gonna become this or that person specifically when you are an atheist in comparison to a theist. I think there are some things though that are interesting about the comparison, and I'll compare it with Islam in particular, because you guys are Muslims and you're probably going to relate best to that. So I think that one positive thing about being an atheist in comparison to a Muslim, or the type of Muslim that you are, at least, is that well, I'll go down the bucket list. I have 4 points, and we can talk. I can expand on either of them, so it doesn't get too long, right? So, the first point would be that there's no worrying about anyone's afterlife, right? Neither your own nor your good non-Muslim friends, not maybe your non-Muslim family if you're a revert, right? There's no kind of anxiety induced by whether or not somebody's going to go to hell. Second point would be there's no wondering, like when something bad happens to you, about, maybe I've angered God, maybe I've done something wrong here or there, maybe this is a punishment for something that I've done, what can I do, right? You can simply just look at the thing and say, well, maybe this is just coincidence. And if it isn't coincidence, what can I do about it in a more productive sense? The third point is let's say no more useless rituals, right? And by that, I don't mean that all the rituals that Islam prescribes to you are completely useless. I think that, for example, prayer, could have a similar function, such as meditation, which is generally useful. But you can kind of engage in the kind of rituals that are actually useful to you, and you're not doing it out of being forced to do it, right? You're never going to be annoyed by anything you're doing because...
Pete, are you saying these are benefits of being an atheist?
In comparison to being a Muslim, yeah.
He's got one more point to make, Hamza. He's got one more point to make.
Sorry.
Right, and
I could contain myself.
The fourth point, I'll make it quick. Sorry, shouldn't expound. So the fourth point is that there's no more worrying about having doubts about things, right? So you don't have to worry that you're going to find out something that maybe something you believe isn't true. If you have a doubt about something, you can simply say, okay, well, maybe I'm wrong. Let's investigate. If I find out I'm wrong, that's fine. If I don't find out I'm wrong and I was actually correct, that's also fine. So it reduces the sort of anxiety that you might have about doubting your beliefs. Those are the 4 points. Maybe you can comment, or if you want more detail on either on any of them.
Well, I'm sure Doctor's been writing down all your points, but I just your first point, the idea that if you're an atheist, you don't have to worry about dying. Is that how people think, that they don't worry about dying?
Well, not dying in and of itself, right? But about specifically the bad part of the afterlife. That's what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, but then you're ignoring the good part. Anyway, the point here is this: you just have faith in there's nothing, isn't there? Because you don't know what's going to happen to you when you die.
I'm pretty certain.
No, you've got no proof. Okay, you were certain based upon what?
Based upon inference of what happens to consciousness when particular physical actions happen to the brain, right? When they knock you over the head, you go unconscious. Right?
What happens to consciousness, Pete, when physical actions happen?
Well, I mean, there's simple inferences we can make, right? Like I said, if you knock somebody over the head, they go unconscious, for example, right? So we can see very simple physical interactions with the brain can remove consciousness, right? And it's just, it would seem to me a stretch to assume that, just a simple hit can do it, but somebody rotting in the ground won't have the same effect, right? So yeah, that's why I think consciousness won't survive the death.
So you think that, I just want to clarify that. So you think that because people can become knocked unconscious, that therefore their consciousness will not survive the brain rotting itself, or whatever that might be?
There's more inferences you can make. For example, if you have a headache, right, that's a conscious experience. You take a physical thing like an aspirin pill, and that somehow completely changes your subjective experience, right? You don't have that pain anymore, or
you're conflating. Yellow Pete, with that example, you're conflating two different things. You're conflating awareness of your environment with consciousness, which is separate from that. So
that was
even
those kind of interchangeably, yeah. But
sure. So there, that's actually you're mixing two different concepts together, unfortunately. So, for example, let me give another example. We have consciousness. If you take someone, even there are examples of people who are in under the highest depths of anesthesia, so they're physically paralyzed. They're So, as far as you can see from brain activity, there's very minimal brain activity, and the people have come back from these describing events of what have happened around them. So these are quite fascinating to read about, because we assume once we sort of give certain drugs to people that their consciousness is completely blocked. But there are examples of people who have remembered what's happened during that scenario, and even if you study, there's lots of studies on near-death experiences. It'd be worth doing that. Mm-hmm. If you look at near-death experiences, there have been examples of people describing what's happened within the emergency room when they were sort of being resuscitated, and these sorts of things. So things that are outside of what we would say ways of measuring, because this is the problem that we have. We're not able to measure. There's no tool to stick. We can't put somebody under a microscope or an fMRI scanner or something and say, look, we're seeing consciousness. All you're seeing is electrical activity at best, and then you make a correlation and say, this is what this must be.
Right.
Now, to equate that with consciousness is actually to take a big leap. And this is and you can see this from many things. So we know that most people, when they go into REM sleep, for example, rapid eye movement sleep, they're dreaming. And people tend to do this in sort of cycles of 90 minutes. So 2 or 3 times a night we're dreaming. We wake up and we don't have any awareness of that, unless the deep sleep was light, and then you'll remember some of your dreams. So if you're remembering dreams, it's a sign that your sleep was not deep enough, even though you're in REM sleep. Now, what's the point of saying that? Well, the point of saying that is that a dream is a experience that you could have, a conscious experience that you don't have any recollection of afterwards. So even despite the fact that the person is knocked unconscious, the fact that they can't remember their time when they were knocked unconscious is not sufficient for us to say that this person is now their consciousness was somehow turned off. In the same way that somebody who has REM sleep and is actively dreaming, you can measure that, but when they wake up, they don't remember their conscious experience. We can't say that their consciousness was turned off during that time because they can't remember it. So you're using sort of a faulty methodology to assume that, therefore, if you do something to the brain, the consciousness can be turned off.
Oh, I mean, just the fact alone that we can measure that somebody is in REM sleep, or what was the other phase, deep sleep, right, where you don't dream, that we can measure that simply from the brain activity shows us already that it's tightly, that it's definitely correlated with brain activity, right? And then the only question is sort of what way is the causation? Does the experience sort of cause the brain to act in a particular way?
You've hit the nail on the head. So the question is, which way is the correlation?
Yeah, the causation, right? And I think in order to test, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, right? If I want to test, if I have two phenomena, A and B, and I want to test which causes who, if I know they're already correlated, right? Then I would artificially change A and see if it does anything to B, right? And if we artificially change the brain, we can very well see that our experience changes, right? And so
you have to do 2 things. You're absolutely right. You need to change A to affect B, but to confirm it, you need to change B to see if it affects A. Because all you're doing otherwise is you're using a positive bias. You're using a bias to say, look, if I'm doing this thing and that effect is happening, if you want to say that the correlation is a causation, then you need to do it in reverse to see if that's actually the case. Otherwise, it's just a conjecture. So, I mean, I'm surprised by that, but there were lots of other things that you mentioned. So I don't think that point for me it makes any. You're not worried about the afterlife.
I don't quite understand that last point. Like, you think you have to sort of show the causation both ways? Is that what you're saying? In order to, what would you need to show in order that A causes B, but B does not cause A?
So this is the problem that you have, because you cannot affect consciousness on its own, whichever methodology we use. Everything that you're going to say about A affects B is going to be a correlation. Everything that you study is just going to be a correlation. You will never get to evidence of causation. You won't get to that.
Well, I mean, if we see that, if, for example, we change something about A, right, and we see B changing, then the only cases that are left that I can see is either that only A causes B and B has no effect on A, or A causes B and B also has some effect on A, right?
Okay, so
in either case,
can we remove parts of the brain without affecting consciousness?
I presume we probably could. I mean, I'm not a neurosurgeon. I mean, we can't do it endlessly, right? Maybe there's some parts that you can take out that are sort of not noticeable, at least in the short run.
Have you heard of the term plasticity, Pete?
Yeah, neuroplasticity.
Yeah, have you heard of that term? So what's neuroplasticity?
It describes the malleability or the way the brain sort of changes with additional experiences. So any act of memory, for example, if I see something, it creates a new connection, and that's neuroplasticity. That's how memories, for example.
So let me sort of summarize it. What happens if you damage a part of the brain, and what you will find is that another part of the brain can actually, over time, develop the function or the functionality or the whatever was happening before, and it can just develop that. Yeah, and so you get a restoration. Just let me finish my point, and you'll understand. You get a restoration of this. So even in our current understanding that this part of the brain does this and that part of the brain does that is shallow at best. Ultimately, we know that the other parts of the brain can carry on doing other things. But again, none of these, you don't remove the person, i.e. their consciousness, from any of these activities. Well, let me put it another way. If you've got a user interface, if you take off, say like I've got my keyboard here, if I pull off the H and throw it away, I can still type, but I can't type the H. If you're measuring, grammar or spelling, and I'm not typing the H, and you say, well, we've affected the keyboard, therefore we've affected the consciousness of the individual. But I can't tell you, because you can't access me, I can't tell you, no, I can still press the H, but the user interface is affected, so I can't actually communicate that to you. But my consciousness is, me as an individual, is not changed. And that's where your measurement becomes a correlation. It's not a causation. I.e., there's no way to check. There's no way to check from the consciousness if physical damage is consciousness damage. If that makes sense.
For that analogy to work, then consciousness would have to be something that basically uses the brain like we would use a keyboard, right? That it absolutely. Consciousness basically does all the work by itself, like somehow. Distinct from the brain, and when it's done, it just pushes the right button in the brain to sort of produce the effect. Like, so
let me give another. This is a little bit long, guys. So you tell me if I'm wasting time.
No, of course.
Let me give an example. Let's just assume for your worldview that everything is material. There's no immaterial at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so in that scenario, do you believe that you have any type of ability to think independent thoughts or free will or anything like this? Do you have that ability?
I mean, there's the ability to think thoughts. Free will, it depends.
Free thought, you're able to think freely.
That depends. Do you mean freely in the sense that there's like no sufficient precondition to my thoughts? Like that nothing really leads to my
thinking
thoughts?
Freely, yeah.
Well, I mean, to me, that kind of freedom is indistinguishable from randomness. And I don't think that we can think in that way, no. I mean, unless there was some sort of quantum effects, but we had that the last time I was on, right? And you didn't you think that, everything is determined, and that's fine. And under that view, that kind of freedom, that kind of randomness, right, which this freedom really is, it's not possible, no.
I would say randomness exists, but anyway, that's another topic. But and you agreed with me really in a roundabout way that actually, if everything is reduced to material only, then whatever effects we're seeing, you can boil down to the physical laws of the universe, and because everything follows within that. So whatever caused, so from the Big Bang to now, the words and the words coming out of your mouth, the thoughts going through your brain were inevitably going to happen. There was no other way that anything else could have happened.
Could be the case.
Do you accept that as a worldview?
I don't prescribe. Like, I don't know which interpretation of quantum mechanics is correct. Some of them are deterministic, and if one of those views is correct, then yes, right? Then that would be exactly what you described. If that's not the case, then no. But
so you don't really. So if you can't even think for yourself, then
I think what is it?
Because you can't until you agree that there has to be the fact that because I believe in free will, I believe in the fact that I can think freely of my own volition, and that requires there to be an immaterial aspect that interacts with the material aspect of me to allow those thoughts to happen.
Yeah,
That's
I
really what I was
simply
talking about, the user interface. Now, you put that you start talking about quantum randomness, etc. These are just lack of information on how things are working. They're not actually true randomness in the sense that there are things that are actually random. We just don't know we just don't have enough knowledge to say that this is how it works. That's all. This randomness is to you.
could be. Yeah, I would just say that the requirement, I don't think that thinking, in order to be proper thinking, requires some sort of non-deterministic element to it, right? In fact, you kind of want your thoughts to be determined by the circumstances, right? You want them to be in accordance with the outer circumstances that, like, for example, the sense data and so on that comes in, because if they're not determined by those, well, then you'll just think any old thing, if you want them to be determined, or else you can't rely on them whatsoever. Like, so I don't see the need for a non-deterministic element in your thinking.
Okay, so I'm going to leave that there. So our thinking is not non-deterministic; it's determined. Okay, that's really the point that I was trying to get to with that, which is fascinating for me. I mean, for me, that's putting me off the whole idea.
It's definitely kind of a mind screw. I agree with that.
Yeah, completely. And you have to deal with that as an atheist. I don't know how you do deal with that, but you have to deal with that.
All right, Yellow Pete, thanks for coming on, and I'm sure we're going to see you again.
So before Yellow Pete, you can send Yellow Pete away, no problem. Just one thing about the meditation. It's really fascinating.
Go on.
We know from things like mindfulness and meditation that we prescribe to people who are anxious, etc., and people have been doing these practices for centuries. That even without a religious worldview. So if someone comes to me and they're anxious, one of the things I'll say to them: look, you need to take time out of your life, sit down for 2 or 3 minutes, and just focus on, we give them breathing exercises or something like that. And so part of this is also I often recommend things like gratefulness journals. So journals where you sit down and you write, I am grateful for my health. I am grateful for my, family. And what we've seen is that when you're doing this, it improves your well-being. You feel better actually about, now, what is this? This is Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. This is shukr, isn't it? Right? And the question really comes, and if in a secularist worldview, in an atheistic worldview, who are you thanking? Who are you grateful to for the things that you are grateful about? And it doesn't make sense. But what does strike through is that there is an intrinsic human need to show gratitude for their own well-being, and this is why we would say that's pointing towards the again, that relationship with the divine that we need as human beings for our tranquility.
I'll just leave that as the last word. I don't think I should comment on that too much. Thanks for having me on again, and maybe I'll be back to some other.
Always a pleasure. You take care. Auf Wiedersehen.
Cheers.
He's a really nice guy.
Yeah, really nice. He comes on a lot of the atheist streams, doesn't he? That guy.
When I get really nice atheists like him, obviously we disagree, and Imran was making some very interesting points about near-death experiences, which I think I need to prod him on more, because there's a lot to learn there. But when you meet these types of atheists, it kind of reminds you of why having the right attitude is so important, right? Because if you have an attitude of arrogance, if you have an attitude of just polemics, then fair enough, we'll have some fun in the den, but it's not going to be the best way if you really want.
It's all about learning here, alhamdulillah, even if we do have a little bit of fun with some of the mocking atheists. Hey, we're gonna have a little bit of fun with Brenda. Brenda's back.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Where in the world are you?
I live in Minnesota, United States.
Okay, what time are you on there?
It's 4:15.
4:15.
Yeah.
Wow. So 6 hours behind. Okay.
Yes, 6 hours. 6 hours from US to
Yeah,
so
cool.
Before I start, I was talking to Jack Angstreich last night, and we were talking about why it is that for so many theists and apologists, when I talk to them, they seem to get very triggered. And even though it is the case that I'm transgender, neither of us thought that that was really sufficient explanation for the cause. And so I really don't know. I do not intend to upset the both Muslim or Christian apologists that I talk to, but for some reason, when I do, they do seem to get very agitated, and
Brenda,
I have no insight into why that is.
Brenda, do you
Yes.
feel that we got triggered by you last time?
Yes, a little bit.
No, you're wrong.
Yeah. Well, you cut me off.
Well, yeah, but maybe there was a good reason
Yeah.
for that, though. It doesn't mean we're
Yeah.
triggered by it. It doesn't mean you're upsetting us. Maybe you were boring us. Maybe you're inconsistent. I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah. I think it
It wouldn't just be because,
really
oh my God,
does.
Brenda did something we don't want to hear, so we're going to switch it off.
Right. So the reason I was
What were you and Jack thinking we were triggered about? What did you think was so profound?
oh,
that you
not
upset
about you. We were not discussing you in particular, but
Okay,
in general, the reaction that many apologists and theists online have to me, which is to be very very triggered, and I don't really know what it is. I just wanted to preface by saying that what motivated me to join tonight is, well, one is you guys have always been pretty respectful, and I appreciate that. But what motivated me was some kind of claim about truth being a moral value or something. Truth is not a moral virtue. It's not. It's an epistemic norm. That's all it is. There's no morality to truth. It's just sentences can either be true or false, and whether you consider a true statement to be moral or not moral is something that you bring and add to the truth of the statement. So if I say, if I have a dozen eggs in my refrigerator, it's true that I have a dozen eggs in my refrigerator, but there's no moral fact of the matter about those dozen eggs.
No, but there could be a moral opinion about them, isn't it? Not necessarily your egg, but another example. So, it could be a truth that somebody kicked a dog. So that's the reality. They kicked the dog. Now, then what we do, apply that morality to that truth.
Oh, exactly. But it doesn't make the truth moral. It's the person who values. People are valuers. Facts are not values. I believe in the fact-value distinction. I think there are facts, that is, states of affairs, the way the world is, and then there are values. Values are attributed to facts by valuers, by people, by moral agents.
So, what did you hear today? Somebody say that you're triggered by. Let's use that word.
I was motivated. I was motivated to call in because it seemed to me you were confusing truth and
who said it? Who said what? Who said what?
So let me just clarify. So firstly, Brenda, welcome. I think you missed the argument. The argument wasn't precisely what you were saying. I did make the earlier distinction. I'm not sure if you're listening. I did make the distinction between facts and values and why facts can't give you values. I explained what the naturalistic fallacy was there. I additionally did not say that truth itself is just a moral thing.
Okay.
Right? Okay. What I was saying was something different, so I'll repeat it, right? What I was saying is that, and in fact, this would be interesting because Yellow Pete, who was just here about maybe half an hour ago, he agreed.
Brenda's been here the whole time. Brenda's been here the whole time.
Yeah. So, Yellow Pete agreed with this, but I'd like to know your opinion, whether you disagree. Yellow Pete agreed that it is incoherent to be an atheist and to believe in the intrinsic value of anything, including truth. So do you agree or disagree with that?
I'm not even sure I know what that means. I don't know what you mean. I believe in truth, and I believe I hold to certain epistemic norms, but I don't think that that's valuing. I don't understand the question really.
Okay, sure. Let's break it down in some simple sort of terms, right? So, do you believe that if something is true, you should believe it, and something's not true, you should not believe it?
Maybe. I'm not sure.
Okay. If you don't, it's fine. It's fine if you don't have a position. I assumed that if something's true, we should believe it. I believe that myself, and as an atheist, I'm just curious. Do you agree with that?
Just on first blush, I kind of think I have a norm where I wish to have all of my beliefs to comport with reality, that is to be true as much as possible. Yeah. But I recognize that a lot of the things I believe, a lot of the things you believe, a lot of the things everybody believes, we can't possibly validate all of them, you know, to logical consistency. A lot of them are simply guesses to the best explanation. They are probabilistic inferences that we hold with degrees of certainty. And I seek to raise my level of certainty and confidence, but confidence doesn't make things true, right? My confidence.
You know the question you asked for? And you asked about truth.
Sorry, Brenda, you're muddying the water slightly here. It's irrelevant whether we can validate our beliefs. That's a different issue, right? That would get us into epistemology, belief first epistemology, and knowledge first epistemology, and God knows what. What I'm asking is something different. I'm simply asking the question that if something is true, should you believe it? And if something's false, should you not believe it? Is this something that
I think so? I think so. I would, if I knew something to be false, I would reject that claim. Okay. And so, if a claim was true, I would be inclined to accept it. Yeah.
All right. Perfect. Good. Okay. Now, so if somebody refuses and says, "No, I'm not going to follow truth. I'm going to follow falsehood," we would say to that person that you should follow truth, right? That we should make the case for truth. We're not just going to say, well, you can believe in your delusion and I can believe in truth. No, we would say, actually, it's better for you. It's good for you to actually believe in truth. Truth is a good thing to believe in, and falsehood is something bad, and we should actually avoid it.
I'm not sure I'd go that far. I would say that truth, epistemic norms are something one can be in or out of accord with. However, I'm not convinced that knowing the truth is always good for you. For instance, I could know the truth that in 12 hours, an asteroid will strike the Earth and eliminate all life on Earth. And it might not be good for me to know that, but it nevertheless could be true. So, and I'm not sure it would be good for people to know that. It might be better for people to not be aware that of this impending doom.
Okay, so the problem there, and this is actually a problem in philosophy, is that if we go with what you've just said, then truth would actually have instrumental value, but it would not have intrinsic value.
Truth is an epistemic norm.
That's fine.
Yeah, values are separate from truth.
No, but I'm saying something different. We're talking about what you should believe and whether you should look out for uncomfortable truths. So, for example, if like I forgot which civilization, maybe Dr. Imran can help me out here. There was a civilization, I think it might have been the Chinese civilization, who discovered gunpowder.
I think it was the Chinese, yeah.
It was the Chinese.
Yeah, and then they decided to hide it because it was something which was going to be very destructive. So it's the truth, but they didn't want it to be known, right? But if
that's not true at all.
Okay.
Gunpowder isn't a truth.
No. As in the truth of how to make gunpowder, that knowledge is something that they didn't want to be out there.
Well, that's different than the truth.
Yeah. So what I'm speaking about is the way that we value truth. Okay. Do we value truth as being instrumental or intrinsic? And if it's intrinsic, how do we ground it? Do we ground it in atheism, or do we ground it from a theistic point of view?
Well, I don't know what grounding is, and I don't know what intrinsic is. I don't accept, if you mean by intrinsic, you're referring to some kind of essence of a thing. I don't believe in essences. I'm not an essentialist. I don't think things have essences. I think things have properties. The property of a sentence is that it is either true or false.
Okay, so let's break it down into something very, very simple. Right now, if you are conveying to us something, whatever you're trying to convey, and you believe that thing to be true and you value that thing, say whatever thing it is, would you argue that that thing in of itself is valuable? Whatever it is.
Yeah, you're asking me to accept essential. I don't know what in of itself even means. I would say that I think that you should value the statement, the proposition.
Okay, good. So you should value the statement, and that statement should be valued for itself or for its instrumental value.
For its property of being true or false.
Aha, so you believe that the property of it being true or false is what gives it value.
To me. And I think that other people ought to, but people quite often don't value the truth. There's quite a lot of people who don't value truth at all.
Okay, so now we have two things. One is that you value it, and two is that you believe others should. Am I correct? I understand it. Okay.
I would like other people to have the same epistemic norms that I have, and my job as a human being is to convince them that they ought to adopt my epistemic norms.
I'm trying to get you to use language in a sort of consistent way. Is it that you would like them to, or you believe they should? And there's a difference between the two.
I think those are synonymous.
No.
You would no.
They're not. You see,
I think they are.
Okay, so look, I'll give you an example, right? So I would like somebody to be healthy in their diet, right? I would like, that's a preference. Or I would like somebody to like the color black, like I like the color black. That's a sort of thing which you could easily subscribe preference to. But I wouldn't say to somebody that I would like you to believe in what's true. I would say you should believe what's true. And there's a distinction between the two. They are not synonymous.
Yeah, I'm not making that distinction.
Okay.
I'm thinking it's just preferences.
You think there is...
I think that's what values are. Values are preferences.
Okay, that's very problematic, Brenda, right? That's very problematic.
You say so.
Because if I value, okay, so I want world domination and I value myself being dominant in the world. For that value, which is my preference, I'm going to take a bunch of actions which would be very cruel and barbaric, and somebody else whose value is they want the world to be in peace and they would take very nice actions. Since it's just a preference, both of these things are equivalent. You can't adjudicate between them.
Well, I can. I would not value somebody who seeks global domination, and I would gather my friends who agree with me, and we would take action against that potential world dictator and prevent him from taking world domination, which we did with Hitler. Would be the penultimate case here. The world united to prevent him from doing what he wanted to do.
So Brenda, I think you're slightly confused with what I said. I didn't ask what would you do. That's not what I asked. That's irrelevant. What you would do is irrelevant. I'm asking that the dictator and say the free world or whatever it is, you have a preference and a preference.
Yeah.
And there's no way of adjudicating between the preference which one's right or wrong.
Well, there is. I put you down.
That's might is right. That's not.
That's got nothing to do with right and wrong.
That's not adjudicating between the two.
Oh, it definitely does. You don't see Hitler around anymore, do you?
No, the thing is.
Well, he's not. And people like him are in a much worse place.
I get that
because they have the sense that maybe if I try to attempt world domination, the world will come together
But
and
Brenda,
fight me.
But Brenda,
So maybe it's not a good idea for me to do that.
Yeah, Brenda, but you've just given one scenario. The other scenario is the dictator could win.
Yeah, he could.
And then there's no moral argument there against the dictator.
Yeah, I don't.
And plus, again, what you've done is you've not answered the question. I'm saying to you, both of these are preferences, and there's no way of adjudicating between them. You're just telling me what you would do, or what you think victory would ensure that preference goes down. I'm asking you a different question. I'm saying, what's the difference between the two preferences?
There isn't a whole lot of difference. I think that morals and rights are things that people give to each other. They acknowledge to each other. I do not think that they are things out there existing in the world. They are values and preferences that people have. Okay, so just a second. I like language to be very precise here. Are you saying there's not a lot of difference? Are you saying that from the perspective that there is no difference? Or are you saying there is some distinguishing features that we can use to actually differentiate between the two? I'm not sure I know what you're asking. I think that morals and preferences come from people. They do not exist out there in the world. Okay, again, I think there's a slight confusion. When I believe in, say, the value of truth as being a ontological duty that we believe in truth and we tell others that truth is something that should be followed, that doesn't mean it's like physically in the world I'm going to find truth like somewhere, right? No one means that, right? So what we're referring to, some people do. Yeah, but I'm not making that argument, and I've never heard anyone make that argument. So maybe I have. Okay, that's fine, but I never made that argument, and I don't think that makes any sense as an argument. So you're attacking an argument I didn't make, and that's fine. I don't believe in that. I believe it as an ontological duty, as an ontological value, not something physical in the world, because that just wouldn't make any sense, right? That's just so then what is the nature of this ontological duty? What do you mean? What do you mean the nature? Well, you said it's not existing out there in the world. Then where does it exist? Or does it exist? So, or it's simply a duty that we have made for ourselves. Yeah, I can make duties for myself. I could say I need to go grocery shopping in 3 hours, and I can make that an ontological duty for myself. Okay, so I write it down on my to-do list, and therefore I have an objective ontological duty to go grocery shopping in 3 hours. Yeah. So the thing is, Brenda, that again, I said I don't believe that it exists like out there in the world, and then you're saying, where is it? Like the whole discussion that we're having here is about intrinsic worth, intrinsic values. Now, if you are, Brenda, to do what you just said, which is, okay, I'm going to make, I forgot what you said, I'm going to have an ontological duty to go out shopping or go out, whatever it is. Yeah. That thing that you just made up, you just made up, which is perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. Some people, they have this ontological duty, like Sam Harris does, that maximizing human well-being is the ontological duty that we all must subscribe to. And he argues it's a should case. It's not a like case. It's a should case, right? I tend to agree a great deal with Sam Harris. As far as he goes, I do not agree that he has gone as far as to discover some kind of objective moral facts. His moral facts are not objective, but I tend to sympathize, to empathize, to agree with, and to comport myself with the idea that people ought to promote their well-being, and I would like to convince other people that they should do the same. But I don't think that there's some kind of moral imperative out there. I don't think there is. That's not quite what Sam Harris's idea is. His idea isn't about individual well-being. It's about maximizing well-being, collective well-being. Because if it was about if it was about individual well-being, then we'd just have a Hobbesian fight, essentially, right? Of resources and this type of thing. So, okay, here's his argument, and I want you to let me know if you agree with this argument.
His argument is that the assumption here is maximizing well-being of all humans, right? That is the goal, right? That we need for as much as possible to maximize pleasure, maximize well-being. Now, in order for this, we must take step A, B, C, and steps A, B, C, we must recognize that it is objectively true that if this is our stated goal, then these things are objectively to be followed in order to reach that goal. Do you agree with that argument?
The goal is subjective, but yes, there are objective steps to be to comport yourselves with that goal. So
Sure.
my goal to go grocery shopping is there are objective steps I must take in order to be in accord with my stated goals, right?
Good,
And to be in accord with the goal of maximizing all well-being.
Sure.
Right, but that doesn't make my goal of maximizing all well-being itself objective. It just makes the steps leading up to it objective.
No, I
but
get that.
in itself, it is ultimately a subjective role.
Yeah, but there's two severe problems with this view. The first problem is that stated goal from another person's perspective, they could make that a xenophobic goal, and they could just say the maximization of the Han dynasty, right? That we just want China to be great, or so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay. The second problem I have is, do you believe in liberalism?
Yeah, as I understand it, liberalism.
Okay.
Yes, liberalism as I define. You want me to define it?
Sure. Well, liberalism as in normative liberalism, right? The sort of liberalism we all use in our common day language. Okay, so the sort of liberalism.
I don't think anybody has any clue anymore what that's supposed to mean. For me, liberalism. The political terms are so weaponized these days. I don't know. For me, liberalism means that everybody should be free to pursue their own notion of the good within certain limits set by the polity.
Yeah, I would consider that normative liberalism. Yeah. Okay.
Well, you and I are already way ahead of ordinary people when we say that.
But I don't say I agree with it because I'm a Muslim. I don't believe in liberalism. I'm just saying I agree with the definition that you just said.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, if that is the maximizing pleasure, maximizing human happiness, or whatever, this utilitarian argument, and in order for this argument, in order to reach this particular goal of maximizing pleasure, we must take step A, B, C. It doesn't necessarily follow that to reach this stated goal, which again is just an assumption, that liberalism is part of actions A, B, C in order for us to maximize pleasure. It's not necessarily true.
I think that there's a case to be made that liberalism is the best way to achieve,
which is what Sam Harris does. But
yeah.
what I'm saying is something slightly different. I'm not saying you can't attempt to try and justify it. You can attempt to try and justify it. However, you can have somebody else, like say the Chinese Communist Party, who do actually believe they're trying to maximize human well-being, and they are following something other than liberalism, and they're justifying it through their perspective. Now, the difference is here. Sam Harris, just like yourself, would probably argue for a liberal case, but Xi Jinping can argue that the socialism with Chinese characters can achieve the same maximizing of well-being.
Yeah. I don't think that they're trying to maximize well-being. They're a communist. They're a communist state. They're a communist state, and they're trying to maximize egalitarianism.
Yes,
not liberalism.
Yes, I know that. And that egalitarian state they want to get to, and they want to get to a state of maximizing well-being from their perspective, from their capitalistic perspective. That goal.
They aren't capitalist. They aren't capitalist.
Well, China is.
I know they've adopted features of capitalism, but they're usually considered to be a failed worker state.
The way I would put it is they beat the capitalists to their game. They actually have a command economy. But anyway, nonetheless,
That's true. That's true.
Nonetheless, what I'm trying to get to is that apart from the other problem which I raised is that this is completely arbitrary. The second problem is that you can achieve this, right? Maximizing pleasure. Someone can try and argue through the sort of system that the Chinese communist state actually have.
Well, they think that. I don't think that they are, and I don't think that they are maximizing human well-being for the greatest number of
Well,
people.
you're liberal, so of course you'd say no to that.
Yeah, so I disagree with them. So my task is to convince other people that they should pursue a liberal, a democratic republic and not a single-party Marxist state.
Yeah, and they would argue conversely.
Yeah.
Exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
All right, Brenda, we got one more guest waiting. Imran, do you want to add anything to the conversation? Clarify? No, Dan? Brenda? Thanks for joining us.
Hamza, can I clip this portion and post it on my website? My YouTube channel. May I?
Okay.
Last time I agreed to this, I didn't like it. And what happened? I'll explain what happened.
Hamza, can I just come in?
Yeah.
So, Brenda, it's not to do with you in particular. Last time Hamza did this, I actually told him off. Yeah. Not in a harsh way, but I was not happy with it. The reason is we're trying to build this YouTube channel. We have certain goals, we have certain objectives, and to take out those clips is not something that I agree with, and I'm probably going to have an argument with him if he gives you permission right now.
Oh, okay. Well, then I won't.
All right. We'd rather you come here and bring your people here. No problem. Tell them I'm going to be on the Hamza's Den tonight. Come into the comment section and watch us hit.
I don't agree with trolling. I don't agree. I don't troll.
Not you.
No, you don't troll at all. It was a great
mate. Listen to me. Brenda, I've seen the people you're talking about, this Jack guy and this Ask Yourself and all this, and T-Jump. And I've read the comment section, mate. And the trolls.
Oh, yeah. They aren't. Ask Yourself, I have issues with him. I have issues with Jack. I have issues with Jack, although I agree with him on a lot of issues. I don't agree with his certain political views of his. I agree the most with Tom Jump, although I disagree with him on certain positions that he takes. Particularly, I think his moral philosophy is bonkers. But
thank God.
Is that the vegetarian eagle flex? Yeah.
Huh?
Is that his vegetarian eagle flex?
He has a moral intuition that morality is objective, and I don't think I'm not convinced of his argument, right? So I'm not convinced of Jack Angstreik's arguments. I don't particularly accept his Marxism, but I agree with him philosophically on a lot of issues, except for his non-naturalism. I'm a naturalist. So there's a lot of issues that we agree on.
Yeah, but what I will say to you though, you're always welcome here. Yeah. So whenever you're doing a stream, just tell your people I'm going to be there tonight. They're going to let me on.
Oh, I've decided. I think I know why this is going to be a joke. Okay, it's going to be a joke. I think I know why I trigger so many apologists. It's because I'm smarter than they are.
Ah, okay, yeah. You're right. That was a joke. Laters, dude. Oh, dudes. Sorry.
That.
Take care.
Hamza, come on, man. That's dark even for you, bro. That is so dark. Sorry. We just had this pleasant conversation with Brenda, and then right in the end, as the person's leaving the door, he just decided to
Sorry, anyway, Brenda. I apologize.
My system is seized up, but just remove me. It stopped working. No, my browser has literally stopped working. I can't do anything.
Okay, fantastic. There's
I need to go now, Hamza. And
we got one last person.
The thing is, I need to actually go home, and it's
go on. Yeah, that's fine.
Imran bhai is great.
It's my honor, brother. Jazakallah khair. Lovely to have you.
Can I just, before I go, yesterday it was very funny. I was actually with Hamza and Muhammad Hijab. We were doing some research, and we were just like, the way I do research, just here and there. And we were just trying to do some research, and I came across your YouTube page, right? And a video which is 11 years old, and it felt so surreal. It was like you, but like a bit younger. And then you were like, you were ripping apart some Christian apologist. And I was like, oh my God, this YouTube channel is like 11 years old. Why is it dead? Yeah. Come on, man.
Yeah.
What's going on? What's going on?
I've probably been in Dawa since I was young. So I had a channel a long time ago. It's still there because so the arguments are still, even a decade and a half later, are still relevant. Same questions are being asked. So alhamdulillah, I've had a lot of requests to sort of restart. So maybe I'll think about it.
No, you need to, man. You need to. All right, Assalamu alaikum.
Salam. Take care. Thanks for joining us. Come up with a nice topic for next time, yeah? Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Thanks for coming. Right, we've got one last guest coming on, Mr. Pointing Stuff Out. So this, I think this is going to be quite intriguing. I think. Welcome. Mr. Pointing Stuff Out. I'm going to point out, Mr. Pointing Stuff Out, that you're muted. So unmute yourself, mate. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Allah saved you, Imran. Allah saved you.
Alhamdulillah, that's good.
That's it. Okay, mashallah.
Fascinating stream, mashallah.
Yeah, it went everywhere, didn't it, man? We started, the atheists come on and tell us your worldview and tell us how we should live our lives. And they started picking on little things we said and tried to...
So the only thing really was to stop worrying about stuff. It's like burying your head in the sand, like the ostrich. You just put your head in the sand. If I cover my eyes, you can't see me now. It's just
there's 4 points. You don't have to worry about if you're going to go to heaven or hell and stuff. I mean that gives you purpose in life. That gives you reason. That gives you motivation. The way he pointed those 4 things out, they were like negatives, and I'm thinking each time, what? Hey, what?
They're all worrying. No worrying, no wondering, no doing stuff, and no worrying. That's what it was. Alhamdulillah.
To end the stream with the what's the point, innit? That's it.
Yeah.
Subhanallah. All right, let's get it there then. All right then, guys. Once more, thanks for joining. If you've enjoyed what you've seen today, mashallah, then make sure you subscribe, like, share everything. Please join the channel, become members, become a denzian, become part of the pride. That'd be fantastic. I'm going to be adding some more perks to being a member. So, and at the same time, like I say, support the channel, and it'll give you more of an interactive experience once you do join all the emojis and stuff. Efdawah, I believe, have a stream tomorrow. Is that right?
That's right. The Health is Wealth stream is on tomorrow. So that's going to be a really interesting stream. Our brother Chris is doing his update. He will let you know what's been happening. We have some guests on who've also joined in with the Walk with Chris campaign. So please tune in 8:30 tomorrow.
Inshallah. And that's on Efdawah, yeah?
Tower, yeah.
And on Come to Success, that's his channel as well, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, and then obviously on Sunday we have chilling out in the den, just reflecting on what's been said here, and just having a one-on-one with you guys. So time to send on the lion. Let me go find him. Wa alaikum salam. Let me go. I have to time this right, honestly. I have to go end the broadcast.